Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 1 of What If Naruto Was the Black Sheep of the Uchiha clan. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Obito. A young man leans down over a fallen comrade. Even though half of his face is covered by a mask, the emotion is conveyed through his eye. Right beside the half-blind ninja stands a young blonde girl. She's trying to hold in her sobs, but it's not working. The dying boy is trapped underneath a large boulder with only half his head exposed. The end for this particular shinobi is ever approaching, and his comrades know it. His breath hitches as his single red eye swivels over to the man nearest to him. There is a sad, but yet accepting, expression on his face as he rasps, "Kakashi, I just remembered, I didn't get you anything. As a present." There is a pause as he hacks up spots of blood. Despite the pain, though, he presses on. "This Sharingan of mine, I want you to defend the village with it." The girl standing off to side has finally regained some measure of composure and manages to walk over to her fallen teammate with minimal effort. Cracking a painful smile, Obito looks up at the only woman he had ever loved and ran his shaky fingers along her own as she clasped his hand. "Rin, I want you to take this eye of mine and make Kakashi whole," the young man requested. Not looking away from Rin's face, Obito continued, "Kakashi, don't just defend the village, protect Rin. Please, for me, you could do a better job, I know you can." With that, Obito took a deep breath and raised his head enough for the young medic Nin to begin the procedure. Although the pain and loss was evident on her face, Rin's hand never quivered as the delicate treasure that so many had fought over was given freely. Now blind, Obito closed his empty socket and did his best to hang on for just a little longer. "Hey, Rin," Obito called out after the young medic's hand found his once again, "take care of everything for me, our child, too." There was a look from Kakashi, and although the Uchiha couldn't see it, he joked, "Hey, I was good for something. But Rin, don't let him become an Uchiha. They'll rip out his soul and turn him into a monster." "I will," Rin promised. "I don't know where we can go, maybe back to my clan, but I will raise him well. Please, hold on. Minato-sensei will be back soon, then we can." Obito's finger over her lips silenced the emotional girl. "It's too late for that," he whispered. His voice was still as warm and tender as always, but it was fading. "Hey, come on, don't worry about it. Kakashi, go out there and get that guy for me, alright?" Kakashi could hear the Junin gearing up for another jutsu and grimly nodded. As he leapt out of the hole, Rin looked after him, but Obito's laugh shifted her attention. "Hey, he'll be fine. Rin," the Uchiha rasped. "Just look after him, alright? I know you will. He would have been a better father, right? Sorry, you had to settle. Too much sake. This time it was Obito who was silenced." Rin looked down at the funny, irritating, spectacular young man laying beside her. For years he had dropped subtle hints, but she had turned him down. Nicely, of course, but still. She didn't know what it was, maybe just one subtle rejection too many, but Obito was there with a shoulder to cry on and more. But yet, yeah, she was sure. "Obito," Rin started, "I've always liked Kakashi. Always. But I couldn't imagine a more amazing person to be the father of my child. That will never change, Obito. I want a future, our child's future, to be full of people like you." With a sniff, the young Chunin tried to laugh, but only a happy sob came out. "You couldn't have said something like that the day you found out. I lost a tooth when you punched me." This was the strange scene Kakashi intruded back in on. A crying Rin and chuckling Obito. I dealt with him, but reinforcements are going to be here soon. We have to get Obito out of here, Rin. Help me move this boulder and wheel." "No." Obito's harsh cry cut off his teammates. "You two have to get out of here, now." Rin looked over the large rock and took a deep breath. Obito was right, his entire body would be crushed. It was miraculous that he's been conscious as long as he was. "Kakashi, Doden. Ritsudo Tenshou." The ground suddenly started to quake beneath the group as a group of Iwan Nin outside started their jutsu. With rocks falling all around him, Kakashi leaned into the hole with his arm out. "Rin, we've got to go," he called out in a panic. Obito slapped away Rin's hand when he felt her not moving. "Time to go. Don't forget. You're not just living for yourself anymore." With only one last look back, Rin leapt up at Kakashi's arm. Now alone, Obito smiled sadly, only allowing such emotion to come out away from his teammates, as the small enclosure collapsed around him. Due to a great deal of luck, Kakashi and Rin managed to escape behind the cloud of dust created from the cave-in. Although he knew that the large group of Iwan Nin would soon track them, Kakashi opted to stop for a moment on a high tree branch to catch his breath. Suddenly, a noise from behind caught their attention, and Kakashi found himself staring into the eyes of a cocky Iwan Nin. Rin pulled a kunai as the man started to talk, but Kakashi motioned for her to run. "You are in no condition to fight, Rin," Kakashi wheezed, ignoring his opponent's speech as he started doing seals. The blonde was about to argue with him when she was blinded by the bright chakra surrounding her teammate's hand. The noise was deafening. It was as if thousands of birds were chirping throughout the forest. Rising to his feet, Kakashi stated, in a low voice, "I can't let you fight, Rin. Obito would haunt me forever if you, or his child were hurt." The Junin managed to smile even as several rock nin leapt at them from a nearby tree. The last thing he heard was Rin yelling out and a bright blonde flash running across his vision. 8 months later. Only 4 months after I take office and something like this demon attacks. I really have the worst luck, don't I, Kakashi? Minato asked his guest with a humorous chuckle. The pair were currently sitting in a field hospital on the outskirts of Konoha. Several days ago, a report came in from the border of Fire Country that shocked Konoha to its very core. The nine-tailed fox had awakened. That alone was cause for immediate concern, but what was even more pressing was that it was headed straight towards the village. Forward lines were set up at the direction of the new Hokage and things were as ready as they would ever be. Anbu, however, was trying to draw the beast away from the village, but all their attempts had failed. Now the entire ninja population of the village was out in force, willing to give their lives to stop the onslaught. Well, your luck is about as bad as Rin's, I'd say. Kakashi said with a smirk. Rin, happy but annoyed, hit the Junin with her pillow. Kakashi sighed and scratched the back of his head while the Hokage snickered. What? Only you would have your kid on the day of a demon assault. Even worse is that you're now stuck in a field hospital because you were too stubborn to stay in the village. You know I can't just sit back in the village while my old teammates are fighting the thing. Even my child wanted to help, so he decided to meet you all sooner, that's all, Rin responded as she stroked the little puff of blonde hair on the child's head. The fourth leaned over the bed to get a good look at the kid. So, what are you going to name him? I'm guessing you and Obito at least talked about it when you first found out you were pregnant. At the mention of the fallen Uchiha, both Rin and Kakashi grew quiet and the fourth immediately knew he screwed up. After several moments, a torrent of cries broke out from the child and Rin gently rocked him back to silence. Well, I thought of a family name for him. My clan didn't approve of me having the child and Obito didn't want his family involved, so they don't even know. She took a moment to smile at her son. He had quieted down and was looking around the room with his bright blue eyes. Uzumaki. I think Obito would have liked it, so I decided on that as his family name. Kakashi and the fourth looked up at the young woman who was smiling at her child with varying degrees of surprise. Kushina. She would be happy, the fourth said as he looked at the small child. His late wife would have been so happy to be a godmother and someone to carry on her family's name. He was certain it would die out ever since Whirlpool was destroyed. Rin looked over at Kakashi with solemn eyes. Kakashi, I would like you to name him. I know Obito would have liked that. The Junin looked shocked. He was about to protest when a ninja ran into the hospital screaming for the Hokage. Immediately Kakashi, Rin, and the fourth looked up. What is it? The blonde Hokage asked once he waved the man over. Aye, it's the Kyuubi. It's attacking faster than we thought. It will be here within the hour. The man said. Damn it. It wasn't supposed to be here for another day. Jiraiya was going to be here soon to help me deal with it. The Hokage sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. He looked over at Kakashi with stern eyes. Kakashi, until Jiraiya gets here you'll have to help. Go to the forward lines and tell them to prepare to meet the beast. We cannot let it get near Konoha. Kakashi nodded and started to head out of the hospital with the Yondaime, but Rin caught his hand as he walked by. Be careful, Kakashi. I don't want your sensei to die. I can't lose anyone else, Rin said, solemn. Kakashi smiled and patted the baby on his head. We won't. This is a good thing. I'll have time to think up a good name for the kid. Once the fighting starts, stay here and be safe, the Junin called back as he jogged out of the large tent, following the Yondaime. Rin could hear the camp buzzing to life as hundreds of shinobi prepared to have their own meetings with destiny, but right now the only thing on her mind was her son, and her family that was marching off to face the demon. Well, this sucks, Kakashi mused as he watched the Kyuubi simply walk through the first line of defense. The demon had ripped into the forest surrounding the hidden village of the Leaf with wild abandon. Its eyes were glazed over and the killing intent rolling off of it froze the defenders until the fourth managed to calm them down. Now, the Hokage was trying to buy some time atop one of his summoned animals. Gamabunta was fending off the fox's tails with his massive katana and random ninja were launching hundreds of jutsu at the beast. The only attacks there were even making the beat flinch were coming from Gamabunta. Most of the casualties so far were from ninja that were getting too close to the massive fox and getting crushed underfoot. Kakashi's group was somewhat lucky, they were mostly seasoned chunin who knew better than to throw themselves in the path of such a monster. Suddenly, the fox got in a hit with one of its tails and sent Gamabunta flying. The massive quake that erupted from the frog hitting the ground made most of the ninja topple over in shock. Kakashi was starting to get a bad feeling when he looked over at where the fox was. Its tails were swishing in the air and the killing intent tripled, sending weaker ninja into a panic. It was glaring at a now downed Gamabunta. Great, if he goes down no one will be able to stop that thing. The Junin sighed and pulled up his Hitai-8, it was time to get serious. Although, Kakashi wondered exactly what he was going to do against something that massive. Back at the hospital. A few minutes earlier, a massive quake shook the tent that was currently housing the few wounded ninja that made it back alive. Rin, although still recovering, was helping wherever she could. Of course, there was only so much one could do. You were taking care of a newborn child. The wounded were streaming in with various tales of personal horror. From what Rin could gather, things were not going well. She was working on a man with a broken leg and managed to catch something in the way of news from his shell-shocked ramblings. TTT, the last thing I saw was that demon fighting the giant frog. One of its tails hit and then the thing fell over. What the hell are we supposed to do now that the fourth is dead? Rin stopped mid-treatment and looked down at the man in shock. No. No. She backed away from the man and hid into another bed. The woman sitting in it winced at the shock and cursed. Slowly, Rin got a hold of herself and turned on the young woman currently cursing at her. She had purple hair and was wearing an odd half-outfit made of fishnet. In a flurry of emotion, the blonde medic looked over at her bed where her child was sleeping. Minato-sensei. Kakashi. I can't lose anyone else. Decision made, Rin grabbed onto the shoulders of the wounded girl to get her attention. Listen to me. Rin yelled at the young girl, cutting off her protests. That child over there, look after him for me. I'll be back after I check on some people at the front. Before the stunned genin could argue, the medic Nin was already sprinting out of the tent. With a sigh, the wounded teen hobbled over to the bed the baby was sleeping in, wondering just what she should do. She felt the ground quake yet again as a deafening roar erupted from the front lines. Everyone stopped talking as they listened to the cry. Even the grouchy teen cringed. The child started to cry and her attention was back on her tiny charge. She hesitantly sat on the bed and held him with her one good arm. Stop crying, you little monster. You don't have anything to worry about. Your mom will be back soon. The girl paused as if thinking that over for a moment before continuing. Well, if she doesn't get stomped flat first. Don't worry, until she does come back you'll have Anko-sama to look after you. The baby stared at her and Anko could have sworn she saw its eye twitch before it crying even louder than before. A few moments ago. Chidori. Several of Kakashi's men shielded their eyes from the attack. His hand had gathered an incredible amount of pure chakra in it and the noise was deafening. Still, most of the squad looked hesitant to follow their leader into the fray. Listen to me, Kakashi called out. I'm going to go distract the fox long enough for the fourth to get Gamabunta back on his feet, understand? Stay out of my way and keep launching jutsu at him, aim for the head. Don't worry about hitting me, just focus on landing hits that will do some damage. Not bothering to wait for a confirmation, Kakashi darted forward. He tore through the ranks sending various shinobi jumping out of the way of the Chidori but his aim was focused on one thing and one thing only. The Kyuubi loomed over a fallen Gamabunta as a tiny blonde blur started to gather a massive amount of chakra. The fox scoffed at the human, as if anything could possibly harm it. Focused as it was on the Hokage and the frog, that the beast didn't even notice the large chakra source running up its leg until the thing was on its back. The demon didn't pay much attention to the quick human as it attempted to swat the tiny eyesore with one of its tails. To its shock, the fleshy thing dodged its tail as if it knew it was coming and ran along the fox's spine. Looking over its shoulder, the Kyuubi was mildly curious at the amount of chakra the human had managed to gather as it sped towards his head. A sudden shift from the front brought the fox's attention back to the massive frog who had now returned upright. Great, just when it had gotten the amphibian on the ground. Opening its mouth, the Kyuubi started to gather a ball of chakra large enough to destroy not only the frog, but most of the surrounding forest as well. Just as it was about to fire, a shearing pain shot through its ear, causing the massive creature to shake its head violently. That damned human had punched a hole through its ear. Damn you, human. I'll grind your bones for that. The beast growled as it watched the frog catch the object of its hate. Although the small hole was instantly repaired, the wound had still hurt. Minato caught his rattled former student once the Kyuubi had tossed the poor Junin. Idiot, now you've got its attention on you, he sighed. The Hokage was grateful for the distraction, though. Well, I just happened to be in the area, the silver-haired nin said as he sat up on the massive frog's head. Gamabunta had a smirk on his face as he looked at the Biju currently glaring in his direction. Well scum, you have just signed the death warrant for everyone in your pathetic village, the Kyuubi growled as it started to suck in breath for an even larger attack than before. Gamabunta immediately ran at the demon but the beast was no longer playing around. It used its tails to swat the creature away as white-hot fire erupted from its mouth, heading straight for the mass of ninja launching weak attacks at it. Slash dash 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 slash. Bring me the wounded, Rin shouted into the decimated ranks of shinobi before her. The new mother had just arrived at the front and was treating anyone that was wounded. She had asked where Kakashi was and was told he ran off to fight the Kyuubi directly, the idiot. Rin was about to take off after him when a man had started screaming for a medic nin. Her inner doctor won out and she was now tending to the wounded. In the middle of trying to heal Anbu's leg, someone tripped over her in a rush. She was about to yell at the man when she saw what he was running from. The Kyuubi was launching a massive fire attack and it was barreling towards the line. She saw Gamabunta struggling to right itself but there was just no way it could get on its feet in time. Sighing, she merely stood to watch the massive maw of fire bearing down on her rather than flee helter-skelter like those around her. At the last moment, she noticed two figures clinging to the top of Gamabunta's head and smiled. Kakashi, Minato-sensei, I'm glad you're still alive. Please watch after my son for me. I'm going to catch up with Obito, Rin whispered to no one in particular. A look of peace was set on her face as the fire engulfed the line, instantly cremating all those caught in it. Slash dash 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 slash. No, you monster, there were hundreds down there. Minato yelled as he watched the line of fire engulf a wide swath of the front line. Kakashi was seething beside him as he charged up another Chidori. The fourth grabbed his shoulder and shook his head. You'll be killed if you try that stunt again, he hissed. Kakashi couldn't remember ever seeing his sensei this disturbed. I have a plan, though. Go and get Rin's baby. I need him for this, he ordered with a determined expression. Kakashi, though, looked at the Hokage as if he were insane. Why the hell do you need him? I can't bring him to a battlefield. The Junin yelled. The look from his sensei shut him up. It was both painful and determined, the look of someone that had an ace up his sleeve. Fine, I trust you know what you're doing, the Junin responded as he leapt off of Gamabunta's head. Smiling at his former student, the Yondaime started doing a long string of hand seals. His frog summons shifted its eyes away from the angry demon fox for a moment and grunted. He knew those seals. You aren't going to use that jutsu, are you? You'll die, you know that, Gamabunta said as one of the Kyuubi's tails was fended off with its giant katana. Minato nodded. He more than anyone knew the price of this particular fuin. It's the only way to win now. This beast is so powerful, even the regular jutsu won't be enough. I'm going to have to modify it, the Hokage said as he ran though the sixth seal. Fine, I'll hold this whelp off until you get done. It was a good fight, Minato, the massive frog said as he slashed at the fox with his sword, trying to drive it back a bit. Gamabunta frowned as the Yondaime finished the jutsu with the ninth seal. Fuin jutsu. Shiki Fuin. The Yondaime yelled. He started to glow with a eerie light as the Kyuubi watched with disdain. A fancy light show. What good do you think that will do? If anything it makes me notice you more. Not exactly a subtle target, the Kyuubi sneered. The fourth met his gaze and said nothing. The demon narrowed his eyes as a shadowy figure appeared behind the blonde human. Its mouth hung open as he recognized the form. It was death itself. You don't have the stones for it, mortal, the giant fox responded. It was steadily becoming more worried, though, despite its assertion. If this life of mine can save the village, I will gladly give it up. Be sealed. The young adult screamed as a titanic hand made of ethereal mass plowed through his chest, clutching the Kyuubi. While it tried to escape, Gamabunta managed to hold onto it while the burning soul of the Biju was ripped from the living world. In a cloud of smoke, the massive form of the Fox Lord disappeared from the battlefield, leaving an odd calm in its wake. The fourth looked down at his stomach and the seal that was now embedded on it. Even though the beast was gone, this was only temporary. He didn't have the life force necessary to hold such a beast. Kakashi had to hurry if this was going to work. Slash dash 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 slash. Kakashi sprinted towards the field hospital, ignoring the cries from the few that had survived the Kyuubi's fire attack. They needed treatment but there was nothing he could possibly do about it. Passing medic Nin, he rushed into the tent and ran to the bed where Rin and her son were supposed to be. What he found was a purple-haired girl holding the crying baby and no Rin in sight. Where's Rin? Kakashi asked in a hurry. Anko shot him a glare that could silence the dead and the Junin calmed down a little. What are you doing, Anko? Where's that boy's mother? She left him in my care. Something about going to save your sorry ass. Ran off to the front and left her noisy brat with me, Anko huffed. When Kakashi fell to his knees and turned white, the genin wondered what was wrong. What's with you? She asked, slightly unnerved. Now she's gone, Kakashi whispered to himself. He was shaking as he pushed himself off the ground. Anko was about to ask again what was going on when she noticed several drops of water hit the ground. Oddly, they were coming from his left eye. It was as if it were crying by itself. Give me the child, Anko. The Yondaime ordered me to get him. Anko looked down at the sleeping boy. So, his family was gone now as well. She rubbed his face before handing the baby over to the copy nin. Don't let anything happen to him, you got that, Kakashi? Anko demanded as Kakashi walked away. The Junin stopped and turned back to the woman with a look that gave even her pause. It was the most fierce look of determination she had ever seen. Nothing will happen to this child while I draw breath, Kakashi stated as he ran off into the burning battlefield. For a moment, Anko looked after him before laying back on the bed in a huff. You better hope nothing happens to him, Kakashi. He's a cute little brat, she said as she rested her eyes. Slash dash 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 slash. How are you doing, Minato? The giant frog, Gamabunta, asked his summoner. The Hokage was lying on the ground with a high fever. He knew his time was almost up. Hey, pretty good considering I have a demon running loose inside my head, Minato responded. You should hear some of the stuff he's saying about you. Worthless being, I'll crush you and your village to dust. The Frog Clan too will not escape my wrath. A booming voice called out from the dark recesses of the young man's mind. I would like to see you try. Somehow I don't think you'll be around too much longer. The demon seemed to calm itself a bit at that. Minato could feel something akin to smugness coming from the creature. I am a greater demon, you scum. My soul is what gives me my power. Once you die I'll break your weak seal and devour your precious city. The young Hokage was now a bit worried. He knew the jutsu wasn't 100% foolproof, but that is what the revision was for. For it to work, he would need a newborn baby. Something with an astounding life force to contain this demon and slowly sap its power. Finally, Minato's tension drained away as he saw the familiar shape of Kakashi run over to where he was lying. What was better is that he was holding the savior of Konoha in his arms. Minato-sensei, I've brought the child as you commanded. Kakashi held the boy out to the blonde man but became nervous and started looking around. Where is the Kyuubi? Did you kill it? Yondaime coughed up some blood and rubbed the baby's head, waking him up. His crying caught Gamabunta's attention and the massive beast leaned down to look at him. You could say I killed the Kyuubi. It is sealed at the moment, but this child is the key to Konoha's survival. My chakra is low, though. Lend me a soldier pill so I can live long enough to do this thing. Kakashi eyed his sensei but nonetheless handed him a red pill from his pouch. After taking it, the Hokage sat up and held the child. Biting his thumb, he began to draw runes on the boy's stomach while giving out instructions. Kakashi, I don't have much time to explain this. The Kyuubi is not completely destroyed. I have to make a stronger seal to keep him under control until he fully dies. I myself am but a shuttle. If I die now, the Kyuubi will be restored and everyone dies. I have to seal him in something full of life energy, something young, so that he will merge with his vessel. Kakashi's eyes grew wide as the fourth finished the runes. This child is a hero. He will play the part of the demon's jailer. Let the people know of the sacrifice of this boy and tell all of this to Rin, all right? Of course, Kakashi lied. It was obvious that his sensei was on his last leg and any stress would just kill him faster. Yondaime smiled and started doing hand seals. A few hundred seals later, the spiral on his stomach started to glow red hot. A roar of wind swept over the battlefield as a chakra storm erupted from the Hokage. A killing intent far greater than anything Kakashi had ever seen froze him in place as a stream of red lanced from his teacher to his nephew. It was blinding. You human scum. One day I'll be free of this seal and you will die. I am immortal, I am power incarnate. You will never be rid of me. The demon howled as it was being ripped from the Yondaime's body. Inside, as the cage for his prison was being built, something else stirred, something that helped the process along by binding the Kyuubi's chakra as it came in. Once the entire essence was moved, the force left, leaving nothing but an empty shell of a prison and prisoner in its wake. Unknowing of the events transpiring inside, Minato smiled and tumbled over, completely spent. Kakashi scooped up the child and wrapped him back up after eyeing the new spiral seal on the boy's stomach. Amazingly, it was a multi-part elephant seal. So very complex for the amount of time spent on it. Kakashi leaned down and felt for a pulse on his fallen teacher. As he had expected, there was none. Above him, Gamabunta sighed. And so goes the strongest ninja in this world, the massive frog mused as he sheathed his sword. He was about to leave for his own dimension to rest, but decided to ask a question before leaving. What is that whelp's name? I think I want to remember it. Kakashi looked into the boy's blue eyes and smiled. Rin decided on the family name, so Obito would have picked this one. Something simple, yet powerful. His name is Uzumaki Naruto and he comes from a strong line of proud shinobi. So, this is the child Kyuubi was sealed in. An elderly Sandaime asked. Hitaki Kakashi, young Junin and only witness to the fourth's death, was currently standing in the Hokage's office with a small child in his arms. Since the fourth was dead, Sarutobi had decided to come out of retirement to keep things in order. When Kakashi nodded, the old man sighed and rubbed his forehead. I feel sorry for him. He was born with a great weight on his shoulders. Does he have any immediate relatives? Kakashi winced. He knew how Obito and Rin felt about the Uchihas knowing that Rin had Obito's child, but he couldn't just lie to the Hokage. His sensei had put great trust in the man and Kakashi would have to do the same. Naruto is the son of Uchiha Obito. Kakashi continued when the Hokage raised an eyebrow. Obito didn't want this family to have any contact with his son. It was his last request, his and Rin's. Kakashi knew he was laying it on a bit thick, but unless he did something drastic, Naruto would be handed over to the Uchiha clan. The Hokage looked thoughtfully down at the child and took a puff from his pipe. Well, if it was their last will and testament, I can't ignore their wishes. I do recommend that once the child is older he be told of his true family. Well, I'm sure we can find someone to take care of him. After all, he is the hero of the village. The aged Hokage said with a smile as he patted the baby on the head. Naruto grabbed at the Hokage's hands with a smile. Kakashi thought this over for a moment before shaking his head. I don't think the village should find out about Naruto being the demon's jailer. Sarutobi looked up at the Junin with an analyzing eye. And why should we deny the village their savior? The boy is a hero. He should be treated as such. The Hokage said before taking a seat at his desk. Kakashi resisted the urge to groan. Sometimes the Sandaime could be so dense. Do you really think the village will accept that? Are you sure they will see Naruto and not the Kyuubi? Kakashi asked. He didn't want to make it seem like the Hokage was being naive, but sometimes the man could give people too much credit. Sarutobi sighed deeply before looking over the baby still in Kakashi's arms. So, who will take care of him? I know you can't since you're trying to get into Anbu and as you said, Rin is gone. Her clan didn't even want her to keep the child, we can't let them raise him. Both Kakashi and the Hokage racked their brains for a possible solution before Kakashi spoke up. Well, he could stay with you until he gets old enough to live with me and be able to look after himself when I'm not there. I can look in on him in between missions before then as well. Besides, Kakashi looked down at the little blonde who was currently flailing his arms at the old Hokage. I think he's taken a liking to you. The Junin said with a smirk. Not that anyone could see it. The Hokage thought this over for a moment. I'll have even less time than you to spend with him, you know that. He countered. Kakashi shrugged but he could tell the man was wavering. Just a bit more. You're the Hokage. You can afford a few helpers. I think it would be good for him to have a bit of a family before he starts to live on his own. Like you said, he is a hero. The Hokage took a deep breath and nodded while Kakashi mentally cheered. Hataki. 1, Hokage. 0. Slash dash 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 slash. I have a mission for you, Fugaku-san. The third said to the man in his office. He pushed a file over to the shinobi. In that file is the information. It's an A- class mission. I hope you can. Before the Hokage could finish, a little blonde boy ran through the door to the office and over to the aged Hokage. Ojiazan. The boy exclaimed. The Hokage sighed but still turned to the blonde child. His guest only looked on with mild curiosity. The boy didn't look to be more than 4 or 5. Yes, Naruto. What is it? The elderly man asked. No matter what the boy did, he couldn't stay angry with him. I want to start at the academy this year. The blonde declared. Fugaku smirked as he listened to the Hokage groan. It seemed this wasn't the first time the boy had brought this up. Naruto, you can't start yet, you're only 5 years old. You can start next year with the other kids your age. The man argued. This had come up more and more since Kakashi had shown the boy a simple jutsu, kids and their toys. But uncle started when he was my age. He told me so. Naruto started to pout now. Of course Kakashi did. That man does not understand how children think. Hokage-sama, my son Itachi entered the academy early, you remember him don't you? Fugaku said. Sarutobi shot him a glare that said, are you trying to encourage him? The man stifled a grin. Naruto took this opportunity to corner the old man. See, Ojiazan, other kids got to enroll early. Naruto exclaimed. Thoughts of demoting a certain masked Junin flew through the Hokage's head. He didn't want to expose the boy to the world so soon. Being enrolled in the academy would also mean the boy was becoming an adult in the eyes of the village. Once that happens, Kakashi would get him. Over the last 5 years, the aged Hokage had gotten very attached to his adopted grandson, but he had to admit, with his daughter getting married soon, he would have to limit his time with the blonde boy. One deep sigh and a nod later, a very happy Naruto was jumping around the office. Well, you should go talk to Kakashi-san about getting ready. I'll do the paperwork this afternoon for your enrollment. He turned to an innocent-looking Fugaku and glared. Naruto looked over at the man who had just helped him on his crusade to convince the Hokage. He walked over to him confidently and studied his face. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Who are you? He asked. The Hokage's eye started to twitch at the boy's lack of manners. He could only imagine how much worse he would get from living with Kakashi. Fugaku smiled a bit at the boy. I am Uchiha Fugaku. It's good to meet you, he said. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he looked at the man's face, leaving Fugaku to wonder what was wrong. You have scary eyes, Naruto said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Why are they so red? Uncle has one eye like that, but he keeps it covered. Fugaku thought for a moment on who the boy's uncle could be. It was common knowledge that Uzumaki Naruto was a war orphan, so his true family hadn't been known, and he could only think of one person with a single Uchiha eye. Ah, you're talking about Kakashi-san. Well, my eye is red because of my Uchiha blood. It's just a genetic trait. Also, our blood limit is less noticeable against our eye color. Enemies are less likely to figure out we're Uchiha if they can't see the Sharingan. Fugaku explained. The Hokage was silently happy at this development. Naruto was getting a lesson on his own history and blood limit from one of the most powerful members of his clan without either of them knowing it. The Sharingan? Naruto questioned as he struggled to say the new word. The man sighed a bit before continuing. Yes, the Sharingan. It's the special ability of the Uchiha clan. I'm sure you'll learn about it at the academy, and Sasuke could tell you about it as well. He's my son, the man said with a bit of pride. Naruto nodded and looked back at the Hokage. Wish I had some cool blood limit like that. Fugaku smirked at the boy while Sarutobi tried not to laugh. How ironic that the very Sharingan Fugaku was so proud of could manifest in the boy in front of him. Well, Naruto, I was in the middle of a meeting with Fugaku-san, so could you please go play with Kakashi? Your birthday is coming this week and I'm sure he has some kind of surprise for you. Also, make sure he also gets your equipment for your first day of class. You start in 2 weeks. Naruto's face lit up and thanked the aged Hokage profusely before charging out the door of the office. Out of curiosity, what gift does Kakashi-san have for him? The Uchiha asked before going back to the mission folder. The Hokage smirked and puffed his pipe. I have no idea. I'm sure Kakashi will come up with something for the boy. At the entrance to the Hokage tower, a certain silver-haired Junin sneezed as an aged Hokage and an amused clan leader had a laugh at his expense. Slash dash 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 slash. Uncle Kakashi. A loud shout was all the warning the Junin received before he was tackled by a young blonde-haired boy. Guess what? Ojiazan said I could start at the academy in a few weeks. I'll be the same age as you were when you started, the boy said happily. Kakashi smiled under his mask. Well, that's quite an accomplishment, Naruto. I guess we should celebrate. I'll take you to Ichiraku's for some ramen, the masked Junin said as he pried the boy away from him. Yeah, you can give me my secret present after we eat. Is it really good? Kakashi flinched. What secret present? Kakashi asked. No use hiding it. Ojiazan said you had something special for my birthday. The blonde informed the man as the pair walked away from the Hokage tower. Did he now? Kakashi deadpanned. I'll get that old man for this. Well, we have to get you a weapon set for your first day at the academy, right? You can have your present then. Gives me a bit of time to think about it. The two walked along the busy streets of Konoha getting greetings from some of the people. More often than not, young women were glaring at the silver-haired Junin for reading his Ika Ika Paradise book out in public. As they neared the ramen stand, Kakashi noticed someone who he hadn't seen in a few weeks. Hey there, Iruka. The teenager that was eating a bowl of ramen turned to look at the man who called him. Kakashi smiled and sat down next to the boy. Haven't seen you in a while, how's it going? Kakashi-san, I wasn't expecting to see you here, Iruka said as he took another slurp of his ramen. He eyed the short blonde boy struggling to get into the high stool next to the Junin. Ah, who's the kid? This is my nephew, Naruto, the man said with a smile. He turned to Naruto and pointed to Iruka. This is Iruka. He'll probably be your teacher at the academy in a few years. Iruka scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Ha, that won't be until after I get to Chunin. The exams are in a few days, you know. Kakashi nodded. That was the reason he had some free time in the village. He managed to convince the Hokage to give him some time off to attend. Yeah, it's good that the exams are going to be here this year. The next time Konoha will host will be in about 7 years, I think. The teen studied the young blonde again. He didn't know Kakashi had a brother or sister and thus didn't think he had a nephew, not to mention the boy looked nothing like the Junin. Kakashi seemed to notice Iruka's confusion, so he decided to clear it up. He's my adopted nephew, Iruka. Anyway, Naruto and I might go see the exams. Another friend of ours is participating. Naruto looked over at his uncle in confusion. He racked his brain trying to think of someone he knew that could qualify as a Chunin. Kakashi watched the boy wondering when he would figure it out. You mean Hubby-chan? Naruto gave Iruka an apprising look. No way you can beat her in a fight, he trailed off. Kakashi stifled a laugh at both the nickname and the boy's lack of faith in the genin. Iruka was just annoyed. Naruto, you really shouldn't judge a person based on how they look. Remember to look underneath the underneath. Anko-chan may be stronger, faster, smarter, and more devious than Iruka here, but hey, he might get lucky. The Junin said. All three people sat in silence while Iruka's eye started to twitch uncontrollably. Anyway, why don't we go ahead and order? I'll have 1 bowl of miso ramen. Yeah, I'll take 2 bowls of beef ramen. The happy blonde yelled. The old man smiled before heading to the kitchen to start their orders. Iruka tried to start a new conversation, one which did not question his combat abilities. So, how's Anbu? I heard you made captain. That's quite a feat at your age, right? Kakashi smirked. Well, it's hard work but it pays well. I might have to get out of Anbu soon though. I'll have to have more free time now that Naruto is living with me. Kakashi said with a bit of a sigh. He quickly replaced it with amusement when he noticed Naruto's expression. Oh, you didn't know. You're going to live next to me in my apartment complex when you start at the academy. You'll have your own place. Really? All right. The boy cheered, throwing his hands up in the air. Even Iruka had to laugh at the kid's enthusiasm. The old ramen cook brought out their orders so Naruto stopped his celebration long enough to eat. So, do you have a plan for the exam, Iruka? Kakashi asked between bites. Even looking straight at the man, you couldn't see his face when he ate. It scared the heck out of Naruto and Iruka. I was planning on getting some last-minute training in. I think the main threat will be Anko-chan like you two said. As long as I put on a good showing, it doesn't matter if I win or not. Besides, my fist match isn't against her, thank Kami-sama. The teenage genin said. Naruto giggled to himself. No one could beat Anko-chan. What do you mean, as long as I put on a good showing? Don't you have to win to be promoted? The blonde asked. Kakashi shook his head. Nope. If you demonstrate Chunin-level intellect and skill, even if you lose your match, you can still be promoted. It's not about who's the strongest or who knows the best jutsu. A Chunin is a commander, so he has to show competence. Kakashi explained. Iruka nodded his head and adjusted his hit. Yeah, Kakashi-san is correct. Oh, you guys said you had to get equipment for your first day at the academy, right? The Twin Dragon shop is having a huge sale on some stuff they got by accident. I think they got an order from Hidden Grass and the owner is trying to unload the stock. Anyway, I have to get going. The training grounds aren't going to be open forever. Oh, could I get you to train with me a bit before the exam? The Junin nodded. After waving to the pair and paying for his meal, the genin headed off in the direction of the training grounds. Paying for their meals, Kakashi and Naruto headed over to the shop Iruka had mentioned. Wow, the blonde said as he looked over the stock. This shop had everything in it. Kunai, shuriken, soldier pills, smoke bombs, everything. While Kakashi was talking to the owner, Naruto ran over to a long chain hanging on a hook in the corner of the store. The owner noticed the boy's interest and walked over with Kakashi. Oh, I see you like the Kusari Fundo. We got it by accident from Hidden Grass. I wanted to give it back to our supplier, but he wouldn't take it. That's the last time I trust him. We're buying our stuff from the blacksmith in town from now on. The man said. Kakashi looked the weapon over. The chain on it was about 7 feet long with iron weights at each end. Well, we'll take that one too. The man said with a smile. Naruto spun around to look at him and barely held in his excitement. I did promise you a birthday gift, right? We can get a book on how to use it at the library. I know I saw one there somewhere. In all, Kakashi purchased a set of kunai, shuriken, a pack of soldier pills, a pack of smoke bombs, ankle pouches for the kunai and shuriken, and the Kusari Fundo. The Junin could feel the emptiness of his wallet as he walked out of the store with the young blonde in tow. Okay, now we get you some new clothes. The Junin said as the pair walked down the main street of Konoha. The boy looked down at what he was wearing and scoffed. What's wrong with what I have? The boy asked. He was wearing a large black t-shirt with orange sweatpants. Kakashi looked him over and sighed. Well, I guess it's not too bad for now, but you're going to have to wear something less flashy once you get to the more advanced lessons in the academy. Right now we can start moving you to your new apartment, all right? The Junin caved. Naruto nodded and started to run off towards the Hokage mansion with Kakashi lazily following. The great move commenced the following day. Most of what the boy owned, which was mostly ramen products and toys, was moved across town to the apartment complex Kakashi lived in. Naruto's new home was right across the hall from the silver-haired Junin and was a simple apartment, a bedroom, kitchen, and small living room and a small bath. From the living room you could see the Hokage monument out of the large bay window. Kakashi and the Hokage donated some simple furniture to the boy and he was well adjusted after the first 2 days. Naruto spent most of his time at the Hokage Tower or with Kakashi, so he always had something to do. With the help of his uncle Kakashi he mapped out a small training regiment that mostly consisted of weapons practice, kunai, shuriken, and kusari fundo. 1 week before Naruto would start the academy, Kakashi had decided to attend the Chunin exams. He and Naruto headed out to the large arena where the matches would take place. There were thousands of people there, some from Konoha but most from foreign nations. Kakashi used his pull to get seats where the main clans usually sat, front row. Wow, these are great seats, Otoji. How did you get them? Naruto asked once he and Kakashi found their seats. The Junin laughed and pointed to his vest. I am an elite Junin and a good friend of the Hokage. There are certain strings I can pull, he said as his eye pulled up in a smile. Naruto looked at the people around him and spotted a familiar face a few seats over. Fugaku-san. The boy yelled while waving. The man in question turned around to look at the boy and seemed confused for a few moments before recognizing him. Kakashi looked wearily at the Uchiha clan leader. You're Naruto, correct? Here for the Chunin exams, I imagine. The man said as he walked down the aisle to speak with the boy. He looked at the man sitting next to Naruto and his slight smile fell. Kakashi-san, it's good to see you here as well. Yes, I thought it would be a good chance to show my nephew what an advanced ninja battle would be like before he started the academy next week. We have a few friends competing also. The Junin said in a lazy tone. A small boy poked his head out from behind the Uchiha clan leader and looked at who was talking. Naruto noticed him and smiled. Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, who are you? The blonde asked. The other boy stepped out from behind the man and smirked. Uchiha Sasuke, you said you were starting the academy this year. You don't look much older than me, the raven-haired boy started. Another boy who looked to be a few years older walked up to the group. Sasuke, don't judge people based on their age. Just because he doesn't look as old as you doesn't mean he isn't skilled. A shinobi cannot make such assumptions. The older boy said with a smile. After laughing at Sasuke's scowl, he turned to the blonde. Forgive my brother. I am Uchiha Itachi, you are Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde said with a wide smile. He was about to start up another conversation when a loud voice caught Naruto's attention. He heard a girl arguing with one of the Anbu by the stairs that lead down to the arena and instantly recognized her. Hubby-chan. We're over here, he exclaimed as he waved his hands frantically. Kakashi groaned as he too noticed the woman. How many times do I have to tell you not to call me that? The woman said as she playfully hit the boy on his head. She looked over and saw Kakashi trying to ignore her, so, of course, she walked over to him and got in his line of sight. You guys here to see me kick the crap out of these other weaklings? The girl asked in a very Naruto-ish way. Well, I'm here to watch an old friend. Naruto's the one that wouldn't stop ranting about coming to see you win the thing, Anko. The Junin said with a smirk. He had to suppress a laugh when said blonde turned bright red. Anko smirked, ruffled the boy's hair, which made his face burn even brighter. Well, at least someone in your family has an eye for talent. I've looked at the competition. There is none, she said with a confident laugh. Naruto nodded with her and adopted a sage-like thinking pose. He was determined to impress her with his limited knowledge about the exams. Well, you might have to worry about Kakashi's friend. He looked kinda tough. There are also ninja from other villages here, so who knows what they can do. He added. Anko and Kakashi blinked at the very un-Naruto-like judgment. Kakashi's friend? She questioned. The silver-haired Junin nodded. Iruka-san. He's been studying a lot for this exam. I don't think you'll win easily. Even if you were taught by Oro. He was cut off by a glare from Anko. It was so fierce that even Naruto moved away from her. The three Uchihas only stared blankly at the scene. Naruto was about to say something when the announcer walked out into the middle of the arena. Will all contestants for the Chunin exam please come down to the arena? All contestants to the arena. The man ordered. Anko shot one more glare at Kakashi before heading to the edge of the stands. Naruto looked at her with a confused expression before she smiled. Well, that's my cue. Naruto, you better cheer for me, she said before he did a backflip over the railing. Naruto turned pale and ran over to the side, scared to death. He was met with the sight of Anko calmly walking down the wall. She looked over her shoulder at the stunned blonde and gave him a thumbs up before sprinting over to where the other contestants were gathering. How did she do that? The boy asked once he found his voice. Kakashi deadpanned, but it was Itachi that answered. She used chakra to grab the wall. It's a basic skill for a shinobi, but I am surprised a genin would have such good control over it, the young boy added. Naruto looked over at him and nodded. The Uchihas made their way back over to their seats as the first match was called out. This is the first match of the final round of the Konoha Chunin exams. The first match is Yumi no Iruka of the Leaf vs. Baki of Hidden Sand. The contestants will battle until death or incapacitation. As the examiner for this portion of the exam, I will call the match if a fighter cannot go on. Now, begin the match. The examiner's hand sliced down to indicate the start. Kakashi and Naruto stepped over to the railing to get a better look as both shinobi drew weapons. Yumi no Iruka vs. Baki of the Sand. Well, I guess going up against you in the first round is better than Anko. The genin mumbled to himself. His opponent had a veil covering half of his face, but he could see the smirk his opponent wore. Iruka pulled out a kunai and slipped into a basic stance while the sand nin drew a short katana. Kid, you'd better give up. I'm at least 5 years your senior, so you don't stand a chance. I have much more battle experience. Baki taunted. Iruka raised an eyebrow at the man and slipped his free hand down to his shuriken pouch. If you have so much more experience than me, why are you still a genin at your age? You can't be that good. Baki flushed and darted at the leaf nin with his katana. Iruka pushed Chakra to his feet and slipped by the blind thrust the sand nin made in an attempt to run him through. Baki's overcommitted thrust let Iruka lash out with his fist, which caught the sand nin in the face. Following up his advantage, Iruka reached into his pouch and pulled out several smoke bombs which he tossed at Baki. The smoke erupted, obscuring the downed sand nin while Iruka put some distance between the smokescreen and himself. In the stands the crowd was watching with great interest. Iruka was considered by some of them to be the smartest genin of his generation and was defiantly showing that his title was deserved. Back in the arena, Iruka did a set of hand seals and pulled out several shuriken. Cage Shuriken Bunshin no Jutsu. Most of the crowd erupted in a series of whispers as Iruka tossed his 8 shuriken, which rapidly doubled into 16 before they plunged into the smoke. Up in the stands, Kakashi was smiling. He taught Iruka that a few days before the exam. Even the Hokage was impressed with the level of skill that Jutsu used. On the arena floor, Iruka quickly slipped a soldier pill from his pouch and popped it into his mouth before running through another set of hand seals. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. A thin stream of fire shot out from Iruka's mouth into the smoke. The heat made the smoke dissipate faster and soon the arena was cleared of it. Iruka broke off the jutsu and a wide crater was left where the smoke once was. In the middle of the crater was a large stone and immediately Iruka knew his attack had missed. Damn. He used a kawarimi. Iruka started to scan the area for the sand nin when a shout from behind him caught him off guard. Bunshin no Jutsu. Several copies of Baki rushed at Iruka with their swords drawn. Iruka knew only one of them could actually hurt him, but his chakra was almost gone due to using 2 high-level jutsu so close together so he could not sense which was the real Baki. He whipped out a kunai and decided on which of the 3 copies to parry. As he ignored the first Baki, Iruka knew he had chosen the wrong clone. The real Baki sliced Iruka's leg as he passed, making the young genin stumble. Iruka gritted his teeth, sliced cleanly through the clone he was originally aiming for as it burst into a cloud of smoke, which Iruka dove though. After Iruka emerged from the small cloud of smoke, he knelt down on one knee, gripping his leg. Baki swiftly brought his sword to the teen's neck as the crowd went silent. Baki himself was not without injury, having several shuriken sticking out from his body. Time to give up, kid. The sand nin said, trying to catch his breath. Iruka bowed his head in thought. In the stands, Naruto was squinting his eyes as if he was watching something he didn't understand. Kakashi put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Hey, don't worry about Iruka. The examiner will call the match before he dies. Kakashi said. That's not it. I think that Iruka is a clone. Kakashi looked at the boy in confusion for a moment before his eyes went wide. He casually pulled up his Hitai-8 and revealed his Sharingan. He saw that the Iruka kneeling down on the ground was indeed a Bunshin. Before Kakashi could question Naruto, the Bunshin Iruka erupted in a cloud of smoke. The sand nin spun around looking for the real genin when the kunai the clone was holding transformed into the leaf nin and quickly disarmed the other nin. Baki was too injured and surprised to put up any defense after he lost his weapon, and he quickly found himself face down in the dust next to an exhausted Iruka. When did you make the clone? Baki asked from where he had landed. Iruka panted a few more times before he could speak. When I cut through your clone, the smoke let me make a Bunshin and henge into a kunai without you seeing it. Do you have any idea how much chakra it takes to henge into something so small? The genin asked with a smile. Baki smiled and promptly passed out. The examiner walked over and checked him. Winner. Yumi no Iruka. The crowd erupted into cheers for the combatants. Even the Hokage stood from his seat and clapped. Kakashi smiled while Naruto jumped up and down. Wow, Iruka-san is good. Think he can teach me that fire jutsu? The boy asked. Kakashi took a look at the now chakra-depleted leaf nin that was being carried out on a stretcher with a bandaged leg. Give him a few days. The Junin said. He pulled his Hitai-8 down and looked at the blonde in front of him. Naruto, what made you think Iruka used a clone during the match? Naruto closed his eyes for a bit before shrugging. I don't know. It's just when I looked at him for a few seconds I could see his body get a bit fuzzy. I just took a guess. The boy said. Kakashi looked over at the Uchihas chatting a few dozen feet away back in the stands. Well, don't tell anyone about it. We'll look into it when you start at the academy, okay? The Junin said with a hint of amusement. It's not developed yet, but Naruto is already experiencing some of the Sharingan. Only a few Uchiha develop it as early as Naruto might. He should get a single comma Sharingan by this time next year if I really train him. Kakashi was brought out of his thoughts by the examiner. The next match will now begin. Mitarashi Anko of the Leaf vs. Inuzuka Hana of the Leaf. Please assume your combat stances and prepare to begin. The two Kunoichi faced off against each other. Hana's nin dog, Ukami, growled at the woman and began to bark. Hana smirked and looked up at the girl in a fishnet vest. Ukami says you smell like a snake. I can't tell you how much I hate snakes. The Kunoichi said. Anko's blood started to boil. She whipped out a kunai and sneered at the pair. Well, you two are a good team, just a mangy pair of bitches that need to be housebroken. Examiner. Let's start this match already. Hana and her dog both snarled while the examiner was shaking. The two most powerful ninja in the contest were aching to get at each other's throats. Up in the stands, Naruto was shouting at the top of his lungs for Anko to win. Said Kunoichi managed to smile at the exuberant blonde right before the examiner sliced his hand to indicate the start of the match. After that, all hell broke loose in the arena. Cliffhangers are always a good way to end a chapter. As to Iruka's skill level, I have always thought he was an excellent ninja. It was his stint as academy teacher that dulled his skills. I think I made Baki look pretty good as to appease Baki fans. Anyway, next up, Anko vs. Hana and Naruto's fist day at the academy. Oh yes, Anko's nickname, Hibi-chan, stands for Snake Chan. The explanation for that is he saw her use her snake hands skill somewhere down the line when he was little. Well, you two are a good team, just a mangy pair of bitches that need to be housebroken. Examiner. Let's start this match already. Hana and her dog both snarled while the examiner was shaking. The two most powerful ninja in the contest were aching to get at each other's throats. Up in the stands, Naruto was shouting at the top of his lungs for Anko to win. Said Kunoichi managed to smile at the exuberant blonde right before the examiner sliced his hand to indicate the start of the match. Mitarashi Anko vs. Inuzuka Hana. Hana quickly pulled out a kunai and tossed it at Anko. The other woman countered with a shuriken that deflected the projectile. Hana's dog growled at its master's ineffective attack. TCH, I guess normal ninja techniques won't work in this situation, will they? The dog user asked more to herself than to her opponent. Anko grinned in a very Naruto-ish way before gathering a bit of chakra. Nothing will work against me, especially something at level. I would suggest you give up, but I want to have a bit of fun first. The purple-haired girl said before running through a set of hand seals. Kaneshibari no Jutsu. Suddenly the dog user was unable to move. It seemed that every muscle in her body had frozen up and it left her completely open to attack. Her dog growled in annoyance as it saw its master lock up. WW, what the hell did you do? The dog user gasped as Anko strode towards her. The purple-haired genin smirked and pulled out a kunai. It's a simple jutsu that most Anbu know. Your body should be completely subdued now, right? I said I was going to drag this out, but I'll just put you out of your misery now. Anko taunted as she started gathering chakra. At his place in the stands, Naruto was smiling broadly at the teen's performance. Hubby-chan is great. No way some dog girl could beat her. The blonde exclaimed happily. Kakashi sighed and shook his head. She's getting overconfident, the Junin said. Naruto looked up at his uncle with an annoyed expression which screamed, explain before I yell at you. Just watch the match, Naruto. Naruto squinted his eyes but turned back to watch the rest of the fight. Back in the arena, Anko had stopped gathering chakra when her opponent started to chuckle. You know some interesting jutsu, I'll give you that. However, you seem to have forgotten something. I have a partner. Anko's eyes went wide in realization, but it was too late. The large dog attacked from her side and latched onto her arm, puncturing her skin with its fangs. The distraction proved enough to make Anko release the paralyzing jutsu. The now freed Hana quickly made hand seals of her own. Shikyaku no Jutsu. The Kunoichi grew more rugged as the beast mimic skill did its work. Her nails grew long and her fangs became more pronounced. Anko was still trying to deal with her nin dog, Ukami, so she didn't notice the feral Hana bolting towards her on all fours. Anko gasped as 5 claws hit home on her back, tearing open her trench coat, drawing 5 red lines on her back. Hana quickly came around for another pass when Anko tensed up her arm that still had the dog attached to it. Only when Hana left the ground for a co-hit did the purple-haired Kunoichi make her move. Seniyashu. The shadow snakes slipped out of Anko's coat arms and wrapped around the surprised dog. Now that she had a firm grip, the snake genin shifted her weight and lifted the dog into the air and swung him like a baseball bat to nail Hana. Anko released her snakes mid-swing so both dog and dog user sailed through the air and landed in a heap several feet away. The crowd applauded the shrewd timing Anko had used to pull off her technique. In the Hokage's seating, Saruto bepaled a bit when he saw the shadow snakes, but he still allowed a smile to appear on his face as the girl got the better of her 2 opponents. Wow, you actually surprised me there for a second. I'm impressed that you drew blood, seriously. The snake user said in honest surprise. She raised her bleeding hand to her mouth and quickly licked all the blood off of it. Time to end this, don't you think? The pair was just coming to their senses when Anko gathered some fresh blood from her back wound and made it a strange tattoo on her arm. Kuchio's no jutsu. Most of the seasoned ninja bolted from their seats to see the jutsu. Kakashi slapped his forehead and mumbled something about overkill, while Naruto watched the cloud of smoke clear in the arena. A panting Anko was standing on a huge snake that was winding around the trees of the stadium. Some of the regular spectators screamed and fled from their seats, but the ninja were awed that a mere genin could actually summon something. The large snake, he was black and about 80 feet in length, moved its eyes up towards Anko. Alright, knock those two out but don't kill them, got it? Anko asked the beast. It seemed to accept this and moved quick as lightning towards the stunned Hana and Ukami, using their awe as an opening to quickly wrap them in its coils. The examiner chose a safer spot on the wall to observe the match since the snake took up a large portion of the arena. After a few moments of strangling, both Hana and her dog were out cold. Winner due to KO, Mitarashi Anko. The crowd started to cheer once the snake was dismissed. As with the previous match, the Hokage rose from his seat to clap. Hokage-sama, should we arrest her? A nameless Junin guard asked from his station behind the Sandaime. The old man glared at him for a moment. Why should we do that? As far as I can see, she has done nothing wrong. The old man pointed out. But, those jutsu are the ones Orochimaru used, the man said. The Hokage snorted and rolled his eyes. We should arrest her for just using the training she received. No, she has proven herself more than loyal to us. We will not be arresting Konoha's newest Chunin. The Hokage said. The nameless guard sulked back to his post behind the Hokage's chair. Another Junin looked over at the elder Hokage. So, you've already decided she will be promoted. What about that Iruka kid? He was just as good. The man asked. The Sandaime smiled. Yes, he did put on quite a show, didn't he? He will be promoted as well. Their opponents did well, Baki of the Sand especially. I would recommend to the Kazekage that he be promoted as well. For now though, let's just watch the last match. Hokage said before taking his seat. He looked over the stands and chuckled when he saw a familiar blonde jumping up and down a few levels down. Uncle, where did that huge snake come from? Did they get any bigger? Can hubby-chan teach me to do that? Kakashi was being drowned by questions. He knew something like this would happen when Anko pulled out some of her bigger moves, but he still wasn't ready for it. He took a deep breath and answered. It's a summon animal and yes, they get bigger. I'm sure if you bothered her enough she would teach you how to do it, but you don't exactly have the chakra to summon anything. Besides, why would you want to summon snakes? Nin dogs are much better. The Junin explained. Naruto looked at the unconscious Hana and Ukami being carried out of the arena. Sorry uncle, but I just saw how dogs do against snakes, the boy said. His voice was dripping with admiration for the scaled summons. Kakashi pouted for a few moments until the next match was called. Mitarashi Anko vs. Yumino Iruka. Fighters, please come to the arena. This was it, the final match. Both Naruto and Kakashi looked down with great interest as a recovered Iruka walked out into the arena. Anko was still trying to catch her breath, having lost a lot of chakra from her summoning jutsu. She was really going to have to learn moderation. Mitarashi Anko vs. Yumino Iruka. Ah, Anko-chan, don't you think you should give up? We'll probably both be advanced, so we really don't have to do this, the genin said as he looked at the bleeding snake nin. The wound on her back had been staunched, but it was still oozing droops of blood on the arena floor. Anko smirked and looked over at the man. Give up. You have got to be kidding me. Do you have any idea what kind of hell the brat would put me though if I did that? Besides, I won't hurt you too much, Iruka, no need to be so scared. The girl taunted. Iruka sighed and rolled his shoulders to get the crinks out of it. This was going to be a tough match. He really didn't want to hurt the girl, especially in the state she was in. He could tell Anko was about to fall over from exhaustion, although summoning jutsu ate up chakra like nothing else. Back in the stands, Naruto was getting jittery. Is hubby-chan going to be okay? I mean, Iruka-san can't beat her, right? The blonde asked, a bit more subdued than his previous outbursts. Kakashi scratched his head and looked at the panting Anko. Well, if she brought some soldier pills she should be fine. At that, Naruto sighed in relief. Of course, Anko doesn't think that far ahead, he finished. Naruto's eye started to twitch and the Junin quickly backpedaled. He had no wish to deal with an annoyed kid. Well, Anko is a good kunoichi, I'm sure she'll be fine, he said non-convincingly. Naruto mumbled something about worthless perverts before he turned back to the arena. Anko was shifting from foot to foot as she tried to come up with some sort of plan. Iruka suddenly started his attack and caught the teen off guard. She barely had time to draw up a block as Iruka's fist rocketed towards her midsection. It seemed he was pulling his punches. Anko quickly swatted away the fist and lashed out with her elbow, making the boy duck. She brought her knee up quickly in an attempt to catch him under the chin, but her exhaustion slowed her down. Iruka stopped the knee with his hands and swept her standing leg, causing her to fall on her back. He tried to pin the kunoichi only to find a kunai sailing towards his gut. He bit off a curse and quickly leapt back a few feet to give himself some room in case she had any more tricks. Anko calmly twirled the kunai on her finger as she got to her feet. Her reserves were even less than before and now she had pissed the other genin off. Okay, think Anko. I have to end this fast before he decides to go all out. What the heck can I get him with that won't use up too much strength? It's not like I can just make him fall over unconscious. Now that's an idea. Iruka shuddered when he saw the feral grin Anko flashed at him. Somehow he didn't think this was going to end well. You know, Iruka, that last fight ruined my coat. Anko said nonchalantly as she ran her hands over the blood stains on her trench coat. Not to mention all the holes that horrible woman put in it. Iruka blinked. Just what the heck was she talking about? Anko saw she had his interests as she continued. I should really just take the stupid thing off, don't you think, Iruka-sama? Now, if Iruka had an answer to the question he quickly forgot it in the time it took Anko to slip out of her coat. To the utter joy of the male onlookers it seemed Anko really liked fishnet clothes. She had on a see-through fishnet vest that acted as her top along with a tight sports bra underneath that did very little to hide her features. In the Hokage box, Sarutobi slapped a hand to his forehead while several of his guards just gawked. This is her idea of a winning strategy? Kakashi asked from up in the stands. He shook his head when Anko started to do mock warm-up stretches. Iruka was near catatonic in the arena and Anko was slowly recovering her stamina thanks to her little distraction. He did feel a twinge of pity for his young nephew, though. Naruto passed out the second Anko first dropped her coat. I didn't know someone could bleed that much from their nose. Anko mentally smirked at her blabbering opponent. Iruka was so innocent. She walked up to him with hips swaying and her arms crossed over her chest accenting certain assets. Iruka was still trying to form a singed sentence when Anko was less than half a foot away running her finger in circles on his chest. Iruka-sama. She purred as she cupped his face. All coherent thought in Iruka's brain shut down at this point. The crowd was on edge as Anko's lips inched closer to the stunned genin. 3 inches. 2 inches. Less than an inch. Suddenly Iruka's eyes shot open as he experienced a new world of pain courtesy of Anko's knee in his groin. The entire crowd winced and most of the men started having ghost pains at the sight. At this point, the ref walked over to Iruka who had just slid off of Anko's knee. He was on the point of passing out while making whimpering noises. Anko gave a very Naruto-like grin and poked him in the chest with her foot. Give up, Iruka, she asked. Iruka tried his best to glare but still nodded in reply. The ref kept a close eye on Anko as he raised her arm in the air. Winner, Mitarashi Anko. Once the crowd recovered, there were cheers and applause worthy of the winner of the Chunin exam. In the Hokage box, Sarutobi clapped along with the rest of the arena but he was careful not to knock the tissues that were stopping nosebleeds from his nose. Well, that was a interesting tactic. One of his guards said. The rest simply nodded not really wanting to remember the groin kick as it still caused them to hurt from simply thinking of it. Will she still make Chunin, Hokage-sama? It was a clever distraction tactic. A shinobi should be prepared for anything. Of course, Iruka also did good to last as long as he did so that shows he has good resistance. The old man said. His guards stared in wonder at him. He could always see potential in every action a ninja did. In the stands, Naruto was just coming around as the crowd started filing out of the arena. The exam had been a huge success and small festivals were being held around the city in celebration. Anko walked up to the pair with a small limp. She looked at the groggy Naruto and actually giggled. So, you boys like the show? She asked innocently. Kakashi rolled his visible eye while Naruto tried to shake the mental image of Anko out of his mind so he could look her in the face without blushing. Why you won, hubby-chan? It must have been tough to win 2 matches in a row like that. Naruto replied still not able to look the girl in the eyes. Yeah, it was a shocker, Anko. I thought for sure Iruka had you. Kakashi said. He looked down at the now unconscious Iruka that was being helped off of the field for the second time and cringed. Did you have to kick him so hard, though? Anko snorted and leaned on the railing for support. He had it coming to him. Letting himself be distracted in the middle of a match like that isn't something a ninja should do. She said. But, he did put up a good fight for a little while. I'm almost completely out of chakra now. She said with a sigh. Some movement from Naruto caught her eye. The boy was digging through the small pouch he kept strapped on his leg. She raised an eyebrow as the blonde held out a small pill to her. You can have this soldier pill if you want. The boy said. Anko smiled and patted him on the head. Nah, if I took that I wouldn't be able to celebrate tonight. Those things kill your appetite for a whole day you know. Thanks anyway, kid, she said as she ruffled his hair. Kakashi suppressed a laugh as Naruto mock scowled at the girl and crossed his arms in a pout. You're going out tonight, Anko. Why don't you take Naruto with you? He starts at the academy tomorrow and he could use a last day of fun. I can't do anything with him since I have an Anbu meeting to attend. The Junin asked. Anko cupped her chin in a thinking pose. She didn't have anyone else to hang out with and the kid was entertaining. Alright, the kid can come. The genin looked down at the smiling blonde before rolling her eyes. Just don't embarrass me or call me hubby-chan in public. How could he embarrass you anymore after that last match? Kakashi mumbled to himself as he watched Anko drag his nephew out of the arena. Maybe I should go see if Iruka can talk right yet, the Junin said as he shuffled off towards the infirmary. Slash dash 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 slash. Dango. Ramen. Dango. Ramen. People quickly avoided the pair arguing in the middle of the street. It had started as a nice enough victory celebration. Going to the festivals, meeting nins from other villages, picking up some souvenirs. Heck, Anko even got to sign a few autographs for people that had watched her fight. Now, however, it was turning ugly. Such a food debate was this that most of the busy street was clear of people just trying to avoid the volatile Kunoichi. The little blonde boy didn't seem to be in any better of a mood. This is my celebration, so we're going to a place that has dango. The purple-haired girl argued. Anko was really starting to regret agreeing taking the annoying kid with her. How can you eat that stuff? It's just plain, rice dumplings. The little blonde retorted. Oh yeah, what about ramen? It's just plain, noodles. Anko countered. No one insulted dango like that. Naruto's jaw unhinged at the mere suggestion that ramen was anything but the food of the gods. He gritted his teeth and glared. The two stood in the street and grimaced at each other for a good 10 minutes before one of the few people that bothered to listen to the entire fight dared to talk to them. The pair shifted their glares over to the man and he almost collapsed under the sheer amount of killing intent. That new restaurant over there serves dango and ramen, he chalked out. Anko looked over to where the man was pointing. It was a nice enough place she figured and mumbled her thanks before walking off towards it. Naruto glared at her back and stomped off after her, leaving one very thankful bystander to sink to his knees in relief. The pair walked into the dinner and were quickly seated. It pays to be somewhat famous if only for as long as people remember the exam. The waiter didn't even need to bring the menus as both people already knew what they wanted. Minutes later Anko was enjoying her dango with a few bottles of sake and Naruto was starting on his second bowl of miso ramen. You're not old enough to drink yet, hubby-chan. Naruto noted between slurps. His companion snorted and took another long drink from her bottle. It's only underage if you get caught. Besides, it's a special occasion, she declared as she lifted the bottle in a toast. Naruto rolled his eyes. She was quickly drunk. So, how did you do that snake thing? I've never seen anything like that, the boy asked. Naruto figured he could stave off her drinking if he could keep her occupied. Oh, the summon jutsu. It's not that hard to do actually, you just need a contract with snakes. The girl explained. She popped another dango into her mouth and tossed the skewer into the wall like a knife. She was quite the good shot. Summon contract. Where do I get one of those? The boy asked with a frown. This was quickly becoming too complicated. Anko giggled at his expression and took another drink of sake. Oh yeah, she was drunk. Well, I don't have the original contract with me, but if I wanted to I could summon a snake that has it with him. Naruto smirked at her answer. Time to make a move. Could you summon it for me? I wanna be able to do that, the blonde asked. Anko wobbled a bit in her seat before she dismissed him with a wave of her hand. You're too much of a shrimp to be able to summon anything, there would be no reason for you to sign it, she said. Naruto bit down on his tongue to keep from making an angry comeback. This would require finesse and he couldn't get snippy with her. Come on, Anko-chan, please, the boy begged after he finished up his last bit of ramen. Anko groaned in disappointment once she saw that all of her sake was gone. She was tempted to order more, but she knew what kind of headache she would have in the morning simply from the amount she had already consumed. She wasn't eager to add on to that. Forget it, shrimp. Now, it's getting late, so I'll take you home. Don't forget to grab your stuff, the tipsy girl ordered as she struggled to stand upright. The blonde boy sighed and grabbed her arm to help lead the girl out of the restaurant. His mind was still trying to come up with a way to get that snake contract as they passed the park on the way to his apartment. Anko was already half asleep and slurring her words, so he decided to try the reverse psychology card. He only hoped the normally bright girl wouldn't catch on in her drunken state. You know, hubby-chan, I'm glad you didn't let me sign that snake contract, the boy said as innocently as he could. Anko looked down at the boy who was helping her along with a raised eyebrow and said what sounded like, oh yeah, to the boy. Yeah, Otoji said your fight with that dog girl was a bit of a fluke and said I could sign a contract with nin dogs. I guess I should do that since you won't help me with getting a snake contract. Naruto smirked as Anko stopped in her tracks, seething. Daidat said wah, she slurred. She pushed Naruto away from her and stumbled into the park. Come on kid, let's get you the contract, Anko said as she waved Naruto over to an open spot. She roughly bit her thumb and went through a set of hand seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. Wow, the blonde said as the smoke cleared. Even though it was late at night, he could make out the form of a large python. The beast curled around a nearby tree and glared at Anko. Why have you SSSSU on me? SS's speak. The snake hissed. If Anko was intimidated, she didn't show it as she staggered up to the beast and pelted him on the head with her fist. Don't talk to me like that, you overgrown worm. She ranted. The snake's eye started to twitch as it flicked its tongue out at the kunoichi. If a snake could frown, Naruto would swear that's what it was doing as it leveled its gaze at the wobbly teen. You're drunk, as all it said as it stared at the girl. Anko glared defiantly back at it for a few moments before hiccuping and falling over. Naruto slapped his forehead as he ran over to Anko. He was relieved to see that she had only passed out. The snake noticed the tiny human and tilted its head over to him. Who are you and how do you know this SSS girl? I'm Uzumaki Naruto, her friend. The boy croaked out. Without Anko aware, the snake seemed to be much more intimidating. The snake looked him over with an appraising eye before nodding. Well, I trust you can get her SSS somewhere safe until SSSSHESSS sleeps SSS this off. If that's all, I'll be going, the snake said. Naruto panicked and waved his arms in the air to get its attention before it proofed out of existence. It stopped whatever it was about to do and raised a questioning eyebrow. Anko was supposed to let me sign a contract with you guys. I worked hard to tick her into. Whoops, Naruto didn't catch himself from saying he tricked Anko into summoning the snake. He was ready to take some kind of punishment but was caught off guard when the creature started to hiss loudly. It was almost as if it was laughing. So, you tricked her into summoning me. SSSHE will never live this SSS down. Fooled by SSS, such a tiny human. The creature said between hissing fits. Again Naruto had to bite down an insult to his height. He was only 5, darn it. The snake seemed to recover and then nodded its head. It opened its mouth and for a moment Naruto thought he was going to be eaten. Instead of a quick death, however, a large scroll popped out of the snake's gullet and came to rest at the blonde's feet. Open that and then SSS sign it. Do it with blood. Naruto nodded and unrolled the scroll enough to find the first free name slot. He saw Anko's name and someone called Orochimaru right behind it. He made a note to remember that name because he could have sworn he heard it somewhere before. He took out a kunai from his pouch and hesitated before slicing open his hand. He had to grit his teeth to keep from crying out. After his name was signed, he rolled the scroll back up and pushed it over to the snake that swallowed it again. Naruto was still unnerved out by that. So, that's it. I can summon one of you guys now. The boy asked. The snake did its hissing laugh again before nodding its head. Naruto grinned and pumped his fist in the air in celebration. All right. I bet I can even beat Otoji now, huh? Naruto questioned the snake. Ha. Just because you have a contract with USSS doesn't mean you can summon USSSS. You don't have enough chakra to even think about fighting with one of our kind. Start practicing and see what you can do in a few months SSSS. The snake hissed. Naruto frowned but accepted that for the time being. The boy looked over at the sleeping Anko. Hey, you think you can help me get her to my apartment? I really don't think I can carry her and I don't know where she lives. The boy asked the snake. It seemed displeased for a second before slithering out of the tree it was in and lifting Anko onto its back with its tail. As Naruto was leading the massive snake through the streets, he was glad it was so late at night. There was no one around to freak out at the sight of the creature. Of course, he didn't notice a certain ninja watching the trio from the top a nearby roof. His face couldn't be seen from behind his white Anbu mask. So, how was that? I know what you're thinking. I already gave Naruto the snake contract in another story of mine. I like snakes though, so don't give me any grief about it. Next chapter Naruto will start at the academy, so look for that one. See you guys once my exams are over in a few weeks. 1 Mitarashi Anko, recent Chunin and first-rate ninja, suddenly found herself in a bit of a situation. 1. She was in a place she had never seen before, laying on a couch. 2. There was light coming through the giant bay window of the room she was in. That meant she had spent the night somewhere. 3. She smelled something wonderful and she was very hungry. Of course, her head felt like it was about to jump out of her skull and kick her ass. Screw it, I want food. The Chunin mumbled as she got up from the soft couch. Aw damn, I probably got drunk and some guy picked me up and oh well, Naruto would have to learn about these things sooner or later. God, I hate one night stands. He has food, thought, so he can't be too bad and damn my head hurts. Good morning, hubby-chan. Came a chipper voice from behind her. Anko looked up to see Naruto poke his head from what must have been the kitchen. Sleep good. Breakfast will be ready in a second. The guy brought Naruto with him. What kind of sick bastard did I go home with last night? Anko yelled but regretted it when it was amplified several times in her hungover head. She was about to start wreaking the apartment in frustration and righteous vengeance when Naruto again poked his head of the kitchen. Don't wreak my house, you crazy drunk. He whined. Anko blinked and looked around again before putting down the table she was about to toss out the window. Your house. I didn't get drunk and Anko let that sentence trail off. No need to let the brat know what she thought. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the now sedate teen poking around his apartment. Well, you did get drunk, but I had hubby-san bring you to my house. I couldn't leave you where you passed out. The blonde said. A timer went off in the kitchen and he turned around to look at it. I have to fix breakfast. I'll tell you all about it when we eat. He said before darting back into the kitchen. Anko shrugged and continued her search of Naruto's apartment. Well, I knew the kid was living on his own, but this place is nice. Hey, why is his place better than mine? Before Anko could start cursing her landlord, the front door swung open and a groggy Kakashi stumbled in. Food? Kakashi mumbled like a zombie. Even this early in the morning some things weren't missed by the Junin. The couch had been used, the furniture was moved around a bit, and there was a bewildered, if not hungover, Anko staring back at him. It took the Junin a few moments, but his mind figured out the most likely reason she was here. Got drunk, passed out, and had Naruto drag you to his place to sleep it off. When Anko shrugged, Kakashi sighed. That boy will bring home any stray he finds. He doesn't even know if this one has had her shots. When Anko growled at him, Kakashi waved her off. He had his humor for the morning. Anko-chan, breakfast is done. Naruto called out from the kitchen. Kakashi moved like a man possessed and quickly found a spot at the table in the kitchen. The blonde boy sighed when he saw the Junin sit down. Now there would be less food for him. Anko sauntered into the kitchen a few moments later, rubbing her head. As it turned out, breakfast at Naruto's included ramen, eggs, and milk. Kakashi was expecting this, it seems, and readily dived into his food. Anko was a bit creeped out that he could eat while keeping that mask on. So, are you going to tell me how much of an ass I made myself out to be last night? Anko asked the little boy sitting at the head of the table. Naruto stopped mid-slurp and nodded his head. Well, what's the last thing you remember? He asked. I remember leaving the restaurant but not much else. She replied. Naruto gave a nervous chuckle before Anko pinned him with a glare. Just what did I do? It can't be that bad. Well, on the way home we got to talking about that summon thing you used during the exam. Naruto started. He was briefly interrupted by Kakashi's mumbling of, complete overkill, from his corner of the table, but the blonde ignored that. I asked you if I could sign the contract thingy for snakes, but you said no. After that I kinda tricked you into summoning the snake that had the contract, Naruto added sheepishly. Kakashi stopped eating and almost laughed, almost. Anko was seething beside him and the chopsticks in her hands snapped. What did you do? Anko asked through clenched teeth. By this time, Kakashi's chair was away from the table and he was safely on the other side of the room, guarding the scrambled eggs from the now livid Anko. Naruto was starting to sweat buckets as he swallowed the lump in his throat. Well, you summoned the snake and then you punched him and passed out. I had to have some way of calming him down, so I brought up the summoning contract thing and he asked if I wanted to sign it. You should be thankful hubby-san didn't eat you. Naruto lied, defended. Anko's look told him she didn't believe him at all, but before she could call him on it, Kakashi tapped the boy on the head. Naruto, isn't today your first day of class at the academy? You don't want to be late. Anko can kill you this afternoon when you get back. Naruto gasped and looked at the clock on the wall. Damn, I've got to go. See you after school, hubby-chan. Naruto said as he grabbed his gear and ran out the door. Kakashi's eye twitched and he glared at the purple-haired teen sitting at the table. He learns that kind of language from you, you know. The Junin stated. Anko shrugged and took another bite of her eggs. Well, you want to hear what really happened last night? I was on patrol and I saw most of it. Sure, why not? The brat is getting better at lying, though. Anko said. Kakashi grunted and took Naruto's former seat while he finished off what was left of the scrambled eggs. You did summon a snake. Naruto tricked you into summoning it by saying dogs were better, so you, in your drunken state, set out to disprove him. The thing made a comment about something and you slugged it and passed out. Kakashi said. Anko had expected that much. Naruto and the snake started talking, and if I didn't know better I'd say the snake liked him. He gagged up the contract scroll and had Naruto sign it, then they both dragged you back to the apartment. The snake took a liking to him. That's rare. Anko mused. Kakashi shrugged. I don't know how snakes think. You seem to get along with them all right. If you didn't, that snake would have eaten you. The Junin pointed out. Well, one or two of them like me. The one that has the contract scroll is pretty harsh to people. He didn't even like Orochimaru. Anko said. Kakashi nodded and let the subject drop. He knew better than to pry into her past with the snake Sanin. You know, Kakashi started. You're going to have to train Naruto some since he's got the snake contract. I don't know how to do anything with them. Anko's eyebrow rose as she heard this. Why should I do that? The little brat tricked me to get to the contract so he can train himself. Anko said as she partook of her ramen. Yeah, what happens if he summons a snake and he does something that makes it bite him? Or what if he summons one of the big ones and it eats him? Or, Kakashi would have continued but Anko's head hitting the table in frustration silenced him. Alright, I'll teach the little brat some stuff. I promise you though, if he starts calling me, hubby-sensei, I will personally feed him to Manda. Anko stated. Deal. You can start today with his lessons. I'll go talk to Hokage-sama about lightening your mission load the same time I go to put in my Anbu resignation. Kakashi said as more ramen disappeared from his bowl. You're quitting Anbu. I thought that place was your life. Anko asked as she downed her glass of milk. Some things are more important. Besides, Anbu is a dangerous job. Hokage-sama doesn't want me to get into too much trouble because the village might need me, something about taking on a genin team. Kakashi said as he poured his own milk into the kitchen sink. He lazily gathered up his dishes and started to wash them in the sink. Anko raised an eyebrow at this. You do dishes? Anko asked, thoroughly surprised. Kakashi looked over his shoulder and glared at her with his good eye. When I mess them up from eating the food Naruto cooked for me, I do it as thanks, he not so subtly stated. Anko groaned and grabbed her own plate. I hope that brat is having a better time than me, she mumbled as she started cleaning the blonde boy's kitchen. Uzumaki Naruto. Is there an Uzumaki Naruto here? A disgruntled teacher called from the head of his class as he took roll. Ikijin was defiantly not having a good day. Not only was Hokage-sama assigning him a new assistant teacher, some new chunin that didn't even look to be out of diapers yet, he was being deprived of the one-star student that could have gotten him some recognition before he resigned in a few years. The Hyuga prodigy, Neji, was being kept at the Hyuga compound until his cousin would be attending the academy next year. His pity party was interrupted by the class door sliding open and closing with a slam. A short blonde boy tried to sneak over to a seat and avoid being the center of attention, not that it worked. Uzumaki Naruto, right? Ikijin asked. When the boy nodded, he marked him down on the roll and walked from behind his desk to address the class. This is Konoha Academy. As of today, you are all prospective ninja. Your every move will be watched and evaluated by the teachers here. My assistant, Yumino Iruka, is under training himself, so try to be easy on him. Ikijin said with a chuckle. Iruka, you're a teacher now. That's great. Naruto shouted from on of the top rows. Said Chunin slapped a hand to his forehead and shot from his seat. Naruto, be quiet while Ikijin-sensei is speaking. The class was now thoroughly interrupted and Ikijin's eye was twitching non-stop. Iruka, you're almost as bad as Naruto, the elderly teacher said as he stared the young Chunin down. Iruka started laughing nervously and sank back down in his chair. And, Uzumaki, don't disrupt class. He growled. This instantly shut the blonde up and he quickly got very small in his seat. Now then, I think it's fair I tell you this right up front. I am a firm believer in the pressure cooker training system. Ikijin said as he turned to Iruka with a smirk. With that said, Iruka, would you please take over the class? What? Take over the class? Iruka stuttered. When Ikijin simply smirked and motioned for him to continue, Iruka nearly started hyperventilating. It's not as if he didn't want to, he just wasn't ready to be responsible for the newest generation of Konoha ninja. Seeing that he wasn't going to get out of this, Iruka glanced at the schedule for the day. Lecture for the first part of the day and field exercise near the end of class. That won't work. Wonder if sensei would mind if I put the exercise first so the students could wake up and be more receptive of lecture. Well, he did say he wanted me to try this out. Everyone, file up at the door with your gear, time for light exercise and combat practice. Iruka ordered. Ikijin raised a gray eyebrow at this but said nothing. Ah, combat practice this early in the morning. Naruto groaned. He fished around in his backpack for something when someone ran into him and almost knocked him over in the aisle. Hey, why don't you watch where you're going, little kid? Snarled one of the other students. Naruto snorted and glared at him, not giving an inch. The boy narrowed his eyes and balled up a fist. I told you to move, you. Leave him alone, Mickey. Came a feminine voice from a row above. Both boys looked up from their glaring match to the girl who was now staring them down. She was wearing a sleeveless button-down red shirt and black baggy pants with some sort of weapon strapped to her back. Her hair was in two small buns on either side of her face and that coupled with the frown she was wearing made her look very tomboyish. Stay out of this, 10-10. He ran into me and he won't even move when I tell him to. He's so little I bet he doesn't even know how to talk. The boy, Mickey, sneered. Naruto snorted as he pulled out his Kusari Fundo from his pack and looped it over his shoulder like a bandolier. The girl raised an eye at this but quickly turned her attention back to Mickey. Don't give me that. Just get out of here before I decide to crack your head open with my bow. 10-10 declared. To emphasize her threat she tapped the long weapon settled over her back. The boy glared at her but didn't say anything as he shoved his way past Naruto. Ten stuck her tongue out at his back before turning to the young blonde boy with a smile. You okay, kid? She asked. Naruto smiled back and nodded his head. Yeah, thanks a lot. I could have taken him, though, Naruto said. The girl giggled a bit before starting to walk off towards the door, but she looked over her shoulder as she passed Naruto's aisle. Sure, you could have. I'm Ten, by the way. I hope we get to spar with each other today. Not many people use a Kusari Fundo and I'd like to see how good you are with it. She said. Naruto grinned and again nodded his head. I'm Uzumaki Naruto and I'd love a match. Ten returned his grin and headed off to the line of students with one last chuckle at the boy's enthusiasm. It was contagious. Slash dash 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 slash. All right, let's all find a place to sit, Uruka said as Ikijin looked on. His assistant did have talent in this area. He picked out what was wrong with the lesson plan from one glance. The kids all lounged on the ground in the training area as Uruka looked them over. He spotted Naruto waving at him from the back and couldn't help but smile at the boy's enthusiasm. Okay, for the rest of your academy life, we will have morning exercises first thing. It's like this so you can all wake up and show your best after a full night's sleep. He explained as Ikijin nodded. Now, let's start off with some combat practice to see where you are with your skills, shall we? Uruka said as he looked over the crowd. He knew Naruto had been training with Kakashi for the better part of 2 weeks and before that he lived with the Hokage, so pointed to the young blonde. Naruto, come up here to the front with me, he ordered. Naruto grinned and jumped up from his place on the grass to run up to the front. The class murmured a bit as Naruto took his place beside Uruka, looking quite pleased with himself. Now, I need a sparring partner for Naruto here. Anyone want to volunteer? Uruka sense. Why is that little kid even here? Yelled one of the boys from the middle of the group. Uruka raised an eyebrow as he spotted the speaker, who turned out to be none other than Mickey. He shouldn't be able to even be here, right? Naruto's eye started to twitch a bit and Ten, who had been listening, was about to say something when Uruka spoke up first. Mickey, Naruto here was given special permission to enter the academy a year early by Hokage-sama himself. If you wish to know the details, I suggest you ask him. Uruka said. Mickey's jaw dropped and he quickly sat down. Ten was just as stunned so she didn't get a chance to volunteer as Naruto's sparring partner before someone beat her to the punch again. Uruka-sensei, I would like to spar with Naruto-kun, came a voice from the back of the crowd. Uruka smiled and motioned for the boy to come up to the front. He was about Naruto's age and had a long braided ponytail going down his back. The thing that most stood out about him was his very fuzzy eyebrows. Naruto sized him up and turned to Uruka. Can we use weapons? He asked. Uruka thought for a moment before shaking his head. No, it wouldn't be fair on the first day of classes. Besides, the other boy cut off the assistant teacher as he shook his head furiously. I do not mind, Uruka-sensei. Naruto-kun can use any weapon he likes, the boy enthusiastically remarked. Naruto smiled at him and whipped off his Kusari Fundo. He went into a fair approximation of the basic stance with both ends of the chain in each of his hands with the slack held taut between them. The other boy bowed before dropping into a stance of his own. Hey, I've wanted to practice with this thing for a few days now. You sure you don't mind? What's your name? Naruto asked. I'm Lee. Let's do our best, Naruto-kun, he declared. Uruka shook his head and stepped back from the pair. All right, you two stop when I tell you to. Now, begin, Uruka said as he sliced his hand. Naruto didn't move, but Lee ran forward intent on getting the first hit. He tossed a quick jab that Naruto dodged with little trouble. Lee, not discouraged in the least, threw a harder punch which he expected Naruto to dodge as well, leaving him open for a kick. He was shocked when Naruto didn't move but captured his arm in the chain he was using by twisting the length of chain around his outstretched arm. Naruto smirked as he used this leverage to flip Lee over onto his back. Before Lee could even think about getting up, the chain was pulled taut again as the small blonde dropped to the ground and caught Lee's neck in a scissor hold between his legs and grabbed his arm that was still wrapped up in the Kusari Fundo. That's enough, Uruka said as he walked over to the two kids now getting up off of the ground. Naruto smirked and whipped his chain back around his chest bandolier style and bowed to the other boy. That was a good match, Lee. You're better at taijutsu than me. Good thing you let me use a weapon, the blonde said. Lee's depressed expression quickly changed as he returned the bow. A most excellent match, Naruto-kun. You certainly deserve to be in the academy a year early, Lee exclaimed. Most of the other students were of the same opinion after seeing Naruto's skills. Ten measured the boy with a sharper eye now that she saw he has a bit of experience with his weapon. He's good, maybe we could be sparring partners. Yes, good match to both of you. Lee-kun, you need to work on your speed, but you had a good strategy. Feint Naruto with a punch and catch him with a kick, very clever. Uruka remarked. Lee was a bit surprised that the Chunin could pick that up, but nonetheless, he smiled at the praise. Naruto, you have a solid stance with your weapon, but you need to work on taijutsu so you don't get caught off guard. What happens if you lose your weapon in the middle of a battle? Naruto frowned a bit but still nodded. He knew when someone was right. Slash dash 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 slash. The rest of the students went through their own sparring matches, most with little or no talent other than Tenten, who put her opponent down in less time than it had taken Naruto. Kunai and Shuriken practice took up the time after the sparring matches and served as a cool-down exercise along with running laps around the training yard. The lecture that day consisted mostly of basic chakra theory and hand seal practice. After giving out a small homework assignment, class was let out and Naruto quickly ran out of the door followed by Lee and Tenten. Naruto-kun came two calls from behind the blonde as he jogged out of the door. He turned and saw Tenten walk up to him followed by Lee. Tenten-chan. Sorry we didn't get to spar today. The blonde said sheepishly. Tenten blinked at the chan suffix but let it slide. It's fine, Naruto. I was going to ask if you wanted to train some. We both use weapon styles so I figured we could learn some stuff. She said. Naruto thought a bit and decided he could drop a day of training with Kakashi so he could get to know his new classmates better. Sure. He grinned. Lee was about to walk away when Naruto called out to him as well. Lee, wanna come with us? I need to work on my taijutsu. Lee could barely contain his happiness. Most of the other students wouldn't want to train with him since he couldn't use chakra, not that he would tell his new friend that until he had to. Of course, Naruto-kun. Training is the most important activity of the day. Tenten and Naruto sighed when the boy's eyes lit up with an inner fire. They still couldn't figure out how he did that. The trio walked out of the training yard towards the gate chatting about the different people in their class when the blonde noticed someone at the gate that made his heart stop. It's you. Naruto stuttered as he took a few steps back. His two companions looked at the direction Naruto was so they could make out whoever it was that could scare Naruto that much. They glanced at each other in worry as the mystery person walked slowly towards the group. Narrowed eyes. Check. Throbbing vein on her head. Check. Short purple hair. Check. Fist clenched and twitching. Double check. Only one person regularly fit that bill and the little blonde boy knew she was coming for him and hell was coming with her. Hello, Anko-chan, Naruto stuttered. Said Kunoichi was slowly sauntering up to the blonde with a look of pure annoyance on her face. With the attitude she had this morning, he had many reasons to fear the wrath of a now sober and fully aware Anko. His companions, Tenten and Lee, noted the look on the older teen's face and made a mental note to never get on her bad side while feeling sympathy for their newfound friend. Naruto-kun, Anko said in a neutral voice. This served to scare the boy even more as Anko was never one to use an honorific with him. She was, no doubt in his mind, very pissed off. This fact didn't register to Lee as the boy decided to speak to the very scary girl now in front of Naruto. Who are you? Lee asked bluntly. Tenten shot him a look of, don't let her notice you. But this also didn't register to the pony-tailed youth. Anko's head slowly turned to pin the boy under a glare that could kill flowers, puppies, and everything else good in the world if she was so inclined. Someone who was going to stomp this little brat's ass in a few minutes if he doesn't start explaining himself for what he did yesterday. She hissed. Of course she wasn't really going to hurt him, but shaking the kid up a bit couldn't hurt. Well, she would have shaken him up if he was still standing where he was a few seconds ago. Where the hell did he go? Anko asked as she looked around. A familiar mop top of blonde hair was all that she saw as her prey disappeared behind the wall of the gate she came in. That little snake. He should give up and accept his punishment and not make me chase his ass all over Konoha. Anko whined as she took off after the blonde. Tenten and Lee had watched this exchange in confusion, except for the latter who had created the perfect distraction for Naruto's timely escape and really had no idea on what to make of the angry Anko. Anyone that scared Naruto this badly was worth investigating, so the pair silently nodded to each other and took to the chase. Slash dash 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 slash. Hey, can't believe hubby-chan let me get away like that. Naruto grinned to himself as he continued his flight to safety through the back streets of Konoha. The blonde had led his pursuer through the main market of Konoha while ducking under stalls, weaving in and out of shops, and even hiding inside of a reed basket at one point, all to get away from the wrath of the angry Kunoichi. Why is she so mad at me, anyway? Not like it hurt her any to let me sign the stupid scroll. He mumbled to himself as he ducked down another side street. Unfortunately, he wasn't watching where he was going and ran into something that felt like a soft wall. The sudden stop of momentum sent the boy sprawling on his backside as he looked up at whatever had stopped him. Hello, Naruto-kun. A familiar purple-haired teen purred. The smile she was wearing was anything but friendly. Anko-chan. Hi. The boy chuckled nervously as he tried to backwards crawl. The purple-haired Kunoichi was having none of that and quickly snatched the little boy up by the back of his shirt. And where do you think you're going? We have a lot to discuss, brat. Just what in the hell were you thinking about signing that contract last night? Do you have any idea how dangerous snakes are if you don't know how to handle them? Naruto had the decency to look sheepish and chucked nervously. He was afraid she was going to hold that against him. Well, I really wasn't thinking about it. You just gave me too good of an opportunity. Don't try and flip this around to make it my fault. You took advantage of me when I was drunk. It was at this point in the exchange that Tenten and Lee finally caught up. Naruto and Anko watched the multitude of emotions flash across Tenten's face. Shock, disgust, disbelief, and finally embarrassment. Lee was too innocent to think anything of it. Anko caught onto the young girl's train of thought and hastily waved her hands in a warding motion in front of her. She momentarily forgot she was holding Naruto, so the little blonde was being shaken like a rag doll. No, not like that. Little brat stole a jutsu from me while I was drunk. Oh, Tenten recovered enough to look sheepish. What jutsu did he steal? It must be important if you're getting so worked up about it, miss. Her name's Anko, but you can call her hubby-chan, everyone else does. Naruto squawked as Anko shook him some more. What the hell do you mean everyone calls me that? You're the only one, you little monster. Lee and Tenten's sweat dropped as Anko and Naruto started arguing again. Just when Tenten was going to ask what jutsu it was, Lee spoke up. Anko-san, please don't strangle Naruto-kun. We were going to train for a few hours, so we need him. Naruto shot Lee a, gee, thanks look that was anything but sincere. Training. Well, I suppose I can grant Naruto a stay of execution for a few more hours. Anko mused. The little blonde boy started mumbling under his breath. Why don't you train with us, Anko-san? You said the jutsu Naruto stole was dangerous, right? You can just join us to make sure he doesn't get hurt. Tenten declared because she really wanted to find out what that jutsu was. Anko groaned and dropped Naruto like a sack of potatoes. The little blonde landed in an undignified heap at the Chunin's feet and continued to mumble under his breath. Well, I do have to teach the little thief some things about the jutsu he stole, so I guess I could babysit you two at the same time. We're heading over to training area number 10, you three know how to get there. Sure thing, hubby-chan. Naruto chirped. The purple-haired teen tensed her arm but refrained from hitting the annoying boy. In a flourish of leaves, she was gone. Wow, I only thought Junins could do that. Lee exclaimed. Naruto stood up and dusted himself off. He figured he deserved the heavy-handed way Anko had dealt with him for this stunt. Anko-chan isn't a normal Chunin. She could probably beat any Junin in the village. You have a lot of faith in her, don't you? Tenten stated. She got her answer when the young boy started to laugh nervously and blush. Tenten shook her head and decided not to embarrass him any further. Anyway, let's get to the training area, I know where it is. The two boys nodded and followed the young girl through Konoha. As expected, the blonde was excited about the special training Anko was supposed to give him and wouldn't be quiet about it. Lee was good-natured enough to go along with the conversation and idly chatted with his new friend, but Tenten's mind was elsewhere. Naruto, the girl suddenly spoke up. Naruto stopped his chat with Lee long enough to look over at her. Anko-san, she was in the Chunin exam a few days ago, right? Yeah, Anko-chan beat Iruka-sensei and that dog girl in the finals. Naruto replied with gusto. Lee's eyes lit up with an internal fire as he pumped his fist. She must be a strong warrior to beat Iruka-sensei. The boy exclaimed. Tenten thought about that and readjusted her position on the strange teen. After all, it wasn't often she could find a talented kunoichi in Konoha. PSH, Anko-chan took it easy on him on that last round. After she used a summon to beat the dog girl, she was a bit drained. At least, that's what Otoji said. Naruto supplied as he walked along. Tenten tilted her head in thought. She has a summon contract at her age. Which animal does she have? I know there are only a few in the village. She can summon snakes, just like me. Naruto chirped. Tenten rolled her eyes, as if a first-year student could actually summon anything. Still, a Chunin that had a summon contract was pretty amazing. The trio of children finally made their way to the forested training area number 10. Naruto immediately ran over to Anko, who was sitting up in a tree snaking on a few dango, obviously bored with waiting. I was wondering when you were going to show. Anko bit the last dango off the wooden skewer and hopped out of the tree, landing a few feet in front of the blonde boy. Tenten and Lee, whom Naruto had left behind in his rush to greet Anko, walked up to the teen Chunin. Anko looked them over before frowning slightly. You guys actually decided to come. Alright, let's get this circus underway. Firstly, I want Naruto to summon all the chakra he can mold at one time. Take as long as you need, just tell me when you're at your max. Once Naruto nodded eagerly and started to draw power, Enko ignored him and walked over to the other two kids. She looked each over closely before sighing and pointing to Lee. Don't tell me, taijutsu enthusiast. Lee deflated a bit at that and lost his smile. I have to be one because I can't do anything else, he said in a low voice. Ten looked over at him with a curious expression and Naruto stopped molding chakra for a moment. Enko, who had just figured she may have said something wrong, scratched the back of her neck nervously. What do you mean by that, kid? I have a condition that doesn't allow me to use any ninjutsu or genjutsu, so I've been trying to get by with taijutsu. Lee stated sadly. By this time, Ten was glaring at the spiky-haired Chunin for bringing it up. Enko was about to backpedal big time when a faint noise let her know that they were not alone. Do not despair in the springtime of youth. Enko tensed up and groaned as a figure appeared in a swirl of leaves at the far end of the clearing. He was tall, fit, and green. The blinding sun shines forever on the trees of Konoha. Just as the mighty oak starts as an acorn, so too do you, Lee, start as a youthful child. In time, the sapling tree will burst in a display of radiant youth and become as unmovable as the Hokage monument, so too will you ascend to the ranks of Konoha ninja. Lee was almost in tears from the speech while Enko slapped her forehead. Naruto and Ten just gawked at what the man was wearing. He was a Junin if the vest he was wearing was any indication, but the spandex was certainly pushing the limits of fashion. Enko sighed deeply as she knew what was coming. Ah, Enko-san, such a beautiful flower is yourself teaching the youth of Konoha. It brings tears to my eyes. The spandex-clad Junin said as he smiled brightly at the purple-haired Chunin. Naruto's eye started to twitch as he watched this. He really didn't like the way Thick Brows was smiling at Enko. Hey, who are you? At the outburst, Guy took his attention away from an annoyed Enko and regarded the little blonde boy standing beside her. He was obviously an academy student by the way he was outfitted, but the look he was giving the older Junin was almost enough to kill Guy's mood, almost. Another youthful sapling of Konoha. It was a fine day indeed that I should come here to train. Guy exclaimed while pumping his fist in the air. Naruto almost face-faulted when he saw Lee trying to copy the man. Guy noticed this and turned around to smile at the boy. Lee, I have heard your pleas for help and I have decided to come to your aid for today. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you, Lee shouted as he tried to imitate Guy's first poise with his thumb up. Naruto, glad that Guy had taken his attention away from Enko, turned to her. Is that guy really a ninja? Enko nodded faintly as Lee and Guy's eyes started to flame. As hard as it is to believe, yes. He's actually a taijutsu expert. The teen mumbled as she and Naruto took in the spectacle that was Lee and Guy. Ten shook her head as she watched the taijutsu pair. Somehow she got very scary vibes coming from the two of them. Anyway, she tried to move the training session on. Enko looked over at her after telling Naruto to get back to gathering chakra. Right, let me get a good look at you, Enko said, glad for the distraction. Ten felt like she was being appraised like a piece of furniture. Enko clicked her teeth and crossed her arms. Well, you are obviously a weapons groupie judging by how many kunai and shuriken you have on you. That's actually a pretty good choice for a kunoichi since our reach is shorter than a guy's. Set up some targets around the place and see how many you can hit while I deal with Naruto. Said blonde was still gathering chakra while trying to ignore Guy and Lee. Enko left him alone and leaned against a nearby tree waiting for him to say he'd hit his limit. Truthfully, she was expecting him to keel over a few minutes ago from chakra depletion and let that be the end of the training session. A few minutes later, she noticed a bead of sweat roll down the boy's face and decided enough was enough. Alright, kid, I think that will be good enough for a good attempt at what I want you to do. Naruto looked up at the teen and nodded faintly. He had only recently learned from Kakashi on how to draw chakra and it was really starting to get to him. Of course, he wanted to show off a bit to his new friends and Enko. The seals are boar, dog, rooster, monkey and sheep. Bite your thumb and try it out, Enko ordered. Ten and Lee stopped their respective training in order to wander over near Naruto and Enko. Even Guy looked interested. Enko-chan, why are you teaching your youthful protege the Kuchio's no jutsu at such a young age? Guy questioned as Naruto ran through the seals a few times to get used to them. Enko just smirked in response. You got it yet, kid? When Naruto nodded, Enko motioned to the ground before him. Well then, get to it. Naruto nervously brought his thumb up to his teeth. He really didn't want to do this part, but he also didn't want to disappoint the purple-haired Chunin. Taking a deep breath, he tried to imitate what he saw Enko do during the exam and quickly bit down on the flesh of his finger. Wincing a little, he looked at the blood trickling out of his thumb before running through the hand seals very slowly. Kuchio's no jutsu. Guy, Ten, Lee, and Enko all watched with interest as a small puff of smoke erupted from where Naruto had slammed his hand. The three kids started to cough and wave at the smoke to get it to clear faster. What was that, Guy-san? Lee asked as the smoke dissipated. Guy was too busy searching the smoke for something, anything, that the boy summoned. What he saw was Anko's eye threatened to bulge out of her head. He followed her eyes down to the earth where the little blonde had done his jutsu. There, in a tight coil, was a medium-sized snake. It was strange in that its scale color was light blue with black patches weaving around its body instead of a more natural color. Ha! Look at that, Anko-chan. I summoned one. Naruto yelled excitedly. Anko snapped out of her trance and clenched her fist. Naruto, get your gear, we're going to go see Kakashi. Anko fumed. Naruto tilted his head in confusion. Why? Did I do something wrong? Anko calmed down a bit and shook her head. No, kid, you did great, but we really have to talk to Kakashi. I forgot that he wants to teach you something and he sent me to get you after class was out. Now, dismiss the summon and let's get going. Dismiss him. It's my first one, can't I keep him out just a little while? Naruto groaned. The blue-hued serpent, for its part, sat quietly in its coil watching the activities with an impassive gaze. Tenten bent down to get a closer look at it when Anko put her hand between the snake and the girl. You don't want to get too close to it, snakes are very unpredictable. And Naruto, I guess you can take it with you if you keep it in your sleeve. Anko groaned. She was wreaking the kid's first major accomplishment so she could give him something. Naruto grinned as he bent down to get the serpent. He was just going to grab it until Anko hit him on the head telling him to just hold out his arm. With a bit of muttering, the boy did so and the snake slithered up the boy's arm until it was mostly covered by his short sleeve, only its head could be seen. Now, we've got to get going. Kakashi and I have much to discuss. Anko practically growled. Guy, who had a thoughtful look on his face, decided to step in on that note. Well, since you both have pressing business with my eternal rival, I'll finish the training session for you, Anko-san. Anko actually smiled at him in gratitude, much to the annoyance of Naruto. The pair said their goodbyes and started off at a brisk pace. Soon, the only people left in the training ground were Guy, Lee, and Tenten. Lee, Tenten, we must train for the trials of youth. Come, sit with me and listen to the story of the ultimate training technique that will let anyone become the greatest ninja of all time. It is the self-imposed rule. Lee pulled out a small notebook and started to furiously copy what Guy was saying while Tenten's eye started to twitch. Only a day, only a day, only a day, that's the most time I'll have to put up with these two. Right. As she watched Guy try to teach Lee how to run around while doing a handstand, she started to get the feeling that they would be seeing more of each other than she ever wanted. Slash dash 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 slash. Snacks. Check. Kakashi set a bowl of chips down beside his couch along with several tiny bottles of beer that you find in the mini bars of hotels. No nephews to bother me. Check. Kakashi looked at his wall clock. By this time Anko should have caught up with the blonde and would be keeping him busy for the next few hours. Proper lighting conditions. Check. The window blind lurched open letting in the afternoon sun. Special edition Ica Ica Paradise Volume 2, double check. Hitaki Kakashi was a happy shinobi. No missions for the next few days, someone else to keep Naruto occupied for a few hours, brand new Ica Ica Paradise book, and tiny bottles of beer. Whoever made these things is a genius, they make me feel like a giant. Kakashi happily mumbled to himself as he popped the cap of a mini bottle. He was about to take a drink when his front door started to rock on its hinges due to vigorous knocking. Maybe I can just ignore them. The Junin mused. Kakashi, get your lazy ass to the door. Anko yelled. Kakashi looked from his tiny bottle of beer to the door. Maybe if I'm quiet. I'm not leaving, Hitaki. Anko bellowed as if she could read his thoughts. Hey, I can tune her out. The masked shinobi decided as he flipped open the first page of his book. Anko-chan, I have a spare key. Kakashi heard his nephew reveal to Anko. Kakashi groaned and left his comfy couch to answer the door. That's it, no strippers for his 15th birthday. Kakashi mumbled under his breath. He opened the door to find what he had expected, a very pissed off Anko and a confused, frightened Naruto. Anko, to what do I owe the pleasure? You, me, living room, now. Anko growled. I'm flattered but I don't like to get involved with coworkers. Anko's elbow to his ribs crushed whatever funny bone had produced the jibe so the Junin abruptly abandoned the next few remarks he had ready. Anko stole the mini beer bottle from the whining Kakashi and downed it in one gulp. That's what I needed. Naruto, show your uncle your new pet. Naruto's worried expression turned into a grin as he pulled up his shirt sleeve. Kakashi, still lamenting the loss of his mini beverage, almost missed seeing the bluish snake coiled around Naruto's arm. Oh, Anko's letting you play with one of her summons. That's nice, Kakashi said as he smiled at his nephew. Anko's snort cut that off, however. No, he summoned it. She stated bluntly. On his fist try. Kakashi blinked a few times before pointing at the snake then Naruto. Naruto summoned something on his first try. That's pretty good. Kakashi ruffled the boy's hair as Anko face faulted. Aren't you the least bit curious how a 5-year-old could summon something on his first try? I know you've been training him a bit, but this is something else entirely. Anko argued, sincerely worried that there might be something wrong with the boy. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at that and shrugged. Well, he is my nephew. Of course, you're not going to let it go at that, are you? The Junin sighed and motioned for Naruto to take a seat. I guess it's time to tell you who your family is. I was going to wait until after you graduated, but since you're already showing some of your family's talents, you should know. Naruto tensed at that. He had asked the Hokage about that same subject many times before, but the old man would remain tight-lipped about it. Family thing, right. I'll just see myself out then. Anko muttered as she headed towards the door. She was stopped, however, by Naruto holding onto her coat sleeve. Can Anko-chan stay? She was worried about something earlier. This has something to do with that, right? Naruto asked. Kakashi was about to object, but the look his nephew was leveling made him rethink. Well, if you're sure you want her here for this. Naruto nodded and pulled Anko towards the couch. The purple-haired Kunoichi was a bit surprised the kid would want her there, but he was right, she did want to know. Kakashi took a deep breath and walked over to his window. About 7 years ago I was on a team with Uchiha Obito and Inuzuka Rin. It was funny, really, we were a team of outcasts. Rin couldn't communicate with dogs like the rest of her clan, and Obito couldn't use the Sharingan even though he was 15, 2 years past the normal age for an Uchiha to activate theirs. Anko looked down at the boy sitting beside her. She had never seen such a serious look on his face. As to Kakashi, she had never seen him this remorseful. This was something that she would probably only get to see once in her life. Our team leader, Uzumaki Arashi, later became the Yondaime, but he isn't your father, you're only named after him. Kakashi turned from the window and placed a hand on his nephew's shoulder. You are the son of Uchiha Obito and Inuzuka Rin. Your real name is Uchiha Naruto and you are related to the entire Uchiha clan of Konoha. Anko nodded to herself because it made sense. Even though the boy didn't look anything like an Uchiha, he did have the crazy, spiked hair of the Inuzukas. It would also explain his talent at learning and executing new jutsu. Naruto gripped Anko's arm harder as a lone tear ran down his face. My parents, are they? Kakashi sighed and nodded his head. Your father died on our last mission together and your mother died during the Kyuubi assault. Were my parents good people? Why did I grow up away from the Uchihas and Inuzukas? Didn't they want me? Naruto asked as he started to breath erratically. Anko felt his grip tense again and put a comforting hand over his. She really wasn't good at comforting people. Well, Obito, your father didn't want you to live with the Uchihas. They are a demanding clan and you wouldn't have gotten a childhood. They don't even know about you, actually. As for the Inuzuka, they denounced Rin a few years before you were born. When Rin wanted to become a medic nin instead of following the clan's wishes. Kakashi trailed off as Naruto started to sob. The blonde flung himself at Anko and cried into her coat as she shot Kakashi a, what do I do? Look, to which Kakashi only shrugged. After a few minutes of crying, Naruto managed to pry himself away from Anko and wipe his face on his sleeve. The snake summon, who had been coiled around his arm, calmly slithered onto the coffee table in front of the couch and curled up into a ball. Fugaku-san, am I related to him? The little blonde asked. Kakashi blinked, he wasn't expecting that one. I think he's your first cousin twice removed, why? Can I tell him about my father? I mean, will he want me? Naruto asked in a low voice. Kakashi looked panicked for a moment, but luckily Naruto couldn't see it from his seat on the couch. Oh, you don't want to do that. If he knows you're an Uchiha, he'll drag you off to the Uchiha compound. That's a bad thing. I'll have so many family members then. Naruto argued, getting a bit upset. Anko winced at the implications of that because she too knew what would actually happen. Deciding to give Kakashi a break, she explained. Naruto, if they know about your father, they won't let you live with Kakashi anymore, nor will you be able to learn at your own pace. The rest of your life will be mapped out by some old fart who calls himself a clan elder, and you will have no voice of your own. Same thing if you went to the Inuzuka clan. Also, I don't think they'd want you hanging around with Kakashi. There is some bad blood between them if I'm not mistaken. Kakashi nodded at that, and after a bit Naruto did too, but he had a question. Why don't they like him? The Junin in question shifted from foot to foot as he tried to think up an excuse. Finally, he decided to give in and tell the truth since Anko had already guessed some of it. Well, as you know, my left eye holds the Sharingan, the only one outside their clan. They really don't have any control over me, and that's a problem in their book. How did you get that Sharingan if you're not an Uchiha? That hit home for Kakashi. He cringed and looked over at Anko, but seeing the hold his nephew had on her, it was plain to see she wasn't going anywhere, so she was going to the fourth person alive that knew this story. He groaned again and started to fidget as he put his thoughts together. It's your father's. There, it was done. Kakashi looked to see what effect this had on Naruto and was a bit relieved when the blonde boy looked up at him with only in confusion. Dads. How did you get it? He asked. Kakashi walked back over to the window again and lowered his head. It was like reliving their deaths. Earlier, I told you that your father died on his last mission. On his deathbed he gave his eye to me and your mother implanted it. I had gotten injured earlier and my original left eye was useless, so he gave it to me as a gift for making Junin. It's only because of Obito that I'm even half the shinobi I am today. He taught me how to live, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. Naruto nodded again before rising from the couch. Thank you for telling me about mom and dad, Otoji. I'm just going to go get some rest, I think. Naruto said as he started to walk to the door. The bluish serpent uncoiled itself and slithered after its master. At the door, Naruto let the reptile crawl up to his arm again but paused as he opened the door. Can you teach me about the Inuzuka and Uchiha clans, Otoji? I really want to know more about my parents. Of course. Actually, I've gleaned quite a few jutsu over the years, so I can teach you some of the things you'd learn if you were in their family. Kakashi replied. Naruto actually smiled a little at that. That's good. Just as long as you teach me about the Hitaki clan, too. He said before he closed the door behind him. Kakashi let out a long breath and slumped into a chair beside the couch, but he still had a smile under his mask. That went a lot better than I thought it would. I really thought he would either run to the Uchihas or blame me for it all. Enko chuckled as she grabbed several mini bottles. She tossed a few to the bewildered Junin before downing one of hers in one go. Shut up and drink. Next time, though, tell me if the kid I'm going to be training happens to have a super pedigree so I don't look like an idiot in front of other shinobi. Kakashi could only nod in response as if he had any idea about what she was talking about. Naruto trudged into his apartment after the crushing series of revelations. He tossed his house key down on the small table by the door and promptly slumped down on his couch. For a few moments he just stared at the ceiling with unfocused eyes. He didn't even notice his serpent summon slither down his arm onto the spot next to him. I have a family, he stated to himself. He was still in a bit of shock over this discovery. His world before today had consisted of his uncle, Enko, his grandfather, and Ramen. Now he had two of the largest clans of Konoha as direct relatives. He looked down at the thing that had caused all of this. The snake was calmly eyeing his summon with eyes that flickered with inner intelligence to a degree one wouldn't expect in a snake. I don't suppose you have any advice for me, do you? Naruto asked sarcastically. The blue-black serpent just sat there and actually yawned at him, barring two prominent fangs up front. Naruto shook his head at the reptile and continued his rant. The Uchiha. That means I'm related to Itachi-san and his brother. I guess that makes us cousins or something. Naruto figured. It is a lot to take in at one time, isn't it? Naruto thought for a moment and scratched his head, not even bothering to ask where the helpful voice came from. I can get though it. Maybe. I just wish I could tell someone about it. Well, I'm sure the Uchihas wouldn't want that Enko woman around you if they found out. The mutts from that pack of dogs wouldn't be any better. Naruto bristled at the insult to his mother's family and was about to retort until he realized he had never heard this particular voice before. Lowering his gaze from the ceiling, he met the slitted eyes of the serpent he had summoned a few hours ago. You can talk. Naruto knew that the animals that people summoned had the ability to speak, he just didn't think one so small could do so. The snake hissed erratically as if it was chuckling to itself. Of course, we serpents are not ignorant like the majority of summoned animals. The reptile retorted with a bit of arrogance in its raspy voice. Naruto, more intrigued than anything, restudied the bluish snake. After looking it over several times, the animal snorted. What are you looking at? You don't look that special. Naruto deadpanned. The snake bristled at the remark and made a show of looking the blonde over itself. Neither do you. I still haven't figured out how a hatchling like you could summon one of us, let alone myself. Why's that? Are you special or something? Naruto asked. He was curious about this for two reasons, the first being that it could distract him from thinking about his family dilemma and the latter being that maybe if the snake was special he could show it off to Enko. For its part, the snake puffed itself up a bit. Very special, actually. My full name is Yamada no Orochi, and I haven't been in this world for over, 800 years. I really don't know what twist of fate caused you to summon my consciousness, especially in this inadequate body. The snake sneered as it looked at itself. Naruto raised an eye at that. Are you sure you didn't drink too much sake or something? I only count one head on you, Orochi. Naruto stated. If a snake could sigh, Orochi did it. Like I already said, this isn't my usual body. It's very unusual that only my consciousness would be summoned and not my body. I really have no idea how this happened. Well, what are you going to do now? Naruto asked the reptile. Orochi looked up at him and idly settled into a loose coil on the sofa. That is the question, isn't it? I could just leave or you could dismiss me, but I haven't been to your world for many centuries, it's up to you, really. Naruto weighed the benefits of having a delusional snake around. He still didn't believe the bit about the reptile being Yamada no Orochi, against not having the snake around. Sure, the creature would probably need to be taken care of and taught how to act, but he was proving to be someone to talk to. Not that Naruto would ever admit it, the blonde Uchiha didn't like to live alone and had been thinking of asking his uncle if he could get a pet. A pet that could talk was just that much better. If you don't mind sticking around, I would like to have you here, Naruto decided. Orochi smirked in a very snake-like way before lowering his head to rest on his coils. In that case, wake me for breakfast, the reptile demanded as if Naruto was its slave. The blonde snorted and leaned back on his sofa to go back to thinking. Living in a clan. I wonder how mom and dad did it. Would they really take me away from Otoji and Anko-chan? I don't want to leave them, Naruto thought to himself. Even though Anko had told him about what would happen if he got to know his family, he really wanted to get closer to them. Of course, the bad blood between Kakashi and the Uchihas was a hurdle, as was his mother being rejected by her own clan. Naruto sighed as he looked from the ceiling to his new pet. Even though you really couldn't tell with snakes, Orochi seemed to be asleep. I can figure this out more in the morning, Naruto decided as he yawned. The little blonde boy rose from the couch and trudged off to his bedroom. Slash dash 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 slash. As a stray beam of light filtered through the bedroom window of Hitaki Kakashi. The Junin wrenched an eye open and quickly regretted it as it caused him to become aware of the steady pounding behind his eyes. What the hell did I drink last night? He groaned as he pried himself from his bed. With a bit of stumbling, Kakashi made his way into his living room, entering with the unpleasantness of stepping on a mini bottle. As hungover as he was, the feeling of broken glass shredding up his foot was enough to cause him to give a sharp yelp. Shut the hell up. Some of us have a damn hangover, Anko growled from where she was sprawled out on the couch. Kakashi glared at her as stood on one foot to pick out the glass shards. It's not my fault, you're the one who wanted to drink so much. Anko rolled off the sofa and staggered to her feet, ignoring Kakashi's retort. Damn, this is the second time in 2 days that I've woken up in someone else's apartment with a hangover. If I keep this up, my reputation will be shot to hell. Kakashi resisted the urge to point out one had to have a good reputation in the first place to be able to lose it, but he had enough on his plate that he didn't want to deal with an angry Anko. Speaking of plates. I need food, Kakashi complained. Anko rolled her eyes and pointed at the door. So go leech off the brat, that's what I'm going to do, Anko replied as she headed towards the door. After a few moments of self-deliberation, Kakashi walked after her while making sure to avoid empty mini bottles. Slash dash 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 slash. So, what do you eat? Naruto asked as he looked through his small refrigerator. Orochi was curled up on the kitchen table trying to find a perfect spot to catch the morning sun that filtered through the kitchen window. Eggs, mice, meat, birds, anything, really. Naruto cringed at a few of those but pulled out some fresh eggs and set them on the table in front of the serpent. Once that was done, Naruto started to fix his usual breakfast of eggs, ramen, and bacon. He was just starting to heat up the skillet when Kakashi and Anko stumbled through his front door. Anko-chan, are you staying for breakfast? Naruto happily chirped. The purple-haired girl covered her ears as the boy was less than quiet but still put on a small smile. He was going to feed her, after all. Hey, kid, I don't want to bother you, but if you insist on the breakfast thing, Anko said as she took a seat at the small table. Kakashi grumbled something about someone lying through their teeth, but Naruto didn't pay any attention to it and continued cooking eggs. Anko leaned down on the table and took notice of the snake basking in the sun. You kept the summon. You really should dismiss it. He said he hasn't been out in a while, so I let him stay, Naruto replied. Kakashi leaned in and poked the serpent with the handle of a fork. You can talk? Kakashi asked as he continued to poke. Anko swatted the fork away from the snake with an annoyed expression. Don't bother it, idiot. Anko turned away from the scowling Kakashi and towards the snake. But really, you can talk. Hey, I just asked that, Kakashi tried to point out. You both act like children, of course I can talk. The two nins stopped bickering and stared at the small, bluish snake in front of them. Anko leaned back in her chair with her arms crossed. Why didn't you say anything before? You had plenty of opportunities to speak up, she pointed out. I try not to waste my words on lower beings that can't comprehend anything, the snake replied as it started to swallow one of the eggs in front of it. Naruto sighed as he started to prepare the ramen. Don't be mean to Anko-chan, Orochi. Anko locked up as she heard what Naruto called the snake. What did you call him? Naruto turned around as the sound of Anko's voice and raised an eyebrow. That's what he said his name was, Yamada no Orochi, but I think he's full of it. Anko took a few deep breaths while Kakashi looked on with an impassive face. Something wrong, Anko-chan? Naruto asked. He was about to walk over to her but she held up a hand and laughed nervously. And no, nothing's wrong. Anko turned down to the snake with a searching eye. Seeing that things were becoming too heavy for his taste, Kakashi rolled his head over to Naruto. So, how was your first day at the academy? Oh, I had a sparring match and Iruka-sensei said I needed to work on my taijutsu. He did say I was good with my weapon, though. Naruto replied. Kakashi nodded as his nephew finished with the bacon he was cooking. For the most part, Anko had calmed down but was still silent. Otoji, you said you'd teach me some jutsu that my family could do, right? Kakashi looked up at the blonde and nodded, which made Naruto grin. Good. Can you teach me that thing the dog girl used on Anko-chan during the exams? She managed to hit her with it. Anko snorted. That was luck, kid. I assume you're talking about the Shikyaku no Jutsu, right? That's the most basic of all Inuzuka jutsus. She got you with it. Kakashi mumbled. Before the purple-haired Chunin could belt him for it, he continued. And yes, I can teach it to you. Actually, I think it might suit you. Well, better than it did for your mother. She never could get used to running around on all fours. Naruto smiled even brighter at that. His mother had known it. With most of the food now ready, he fixed himself a plate and sat at his usual spot at the table. You guys can have as much as you want, just clean your plates when you get done. Anko and Kakashi milled around the small kitchen bickering about who gets how much of what. Orochi made a production of hissing a sigh before he slithered up Naruto's arm before latching on with a tight coil. Otoji, do you think they'll let me keep Orochi around during class? Anko tensed a bit but quickly went back to fixing a plate while Kakashi answered. They shouldn't have a problem with it. The Inuzukas bring their dogs with them when they go and I'm sure a snake is quieter than that. He is a nin tool, after all. Naruto nodded happily as he put away the last of his food. He looked a bit hesitant about something but pushed it away as he looked at the clock. Well, I've got class. I'll see you after class, Anko-chan. Anko waved her hand in a dismissive gesture as the blonde grabbed his gear before running out the door. Typical, when you're here he ignores his own uncle. Kakashi pouted. The purple-haired teen couldn't help but sigh. Act like an adult. Kids are annoying like that, you know. Maybe. He'll probably get over his little crush in a few months. I mean, anyone could after spending any length of time with you. Kakashi taunted. He was waiting on her to either hit him or yell but, to his surprise, she did neither. In fact, she looked quietly at the table. Do you think he's taking the whole family thing well? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. He had never Anko worried about something. Well, he does tend to keep things that bother him inside. He may not look it, but he's a serious little kid. Kakashi said, becoming sober himself. I imagine, he'll just open up when he wants to and at his own pace. You can tell he was distracted. Anko smirked at that. Sure was. He didn't even ask you about the Sharingan. I would have thought he would have jumped all over that. He did ask about that Inuzuka thing. Maybe he's more interested in his mother's side of the family. Kakashi played with his food a bit, pushing the eggs around his plate. I guess. He does know a few of the Uchihas, maybe he didn't like them. Anko shrugged. She didn't even know Naruto knew some of his clansmen. We have years to understand that kid, I'm not even going to try to get it all in one day. Kakashi couldn't help but chuckle at that. His nephew was sad he couldn't know his family. He already had the beginnings of one right under his nose. Now, if only he could figure out what role each of them played in it. // First year in the academy. Naruto, age 6. Bah, Iruka-sensei still says my taijutsu sucks. Naruto complained as he and Kakashi walked down the street from the academy. He had just gotten his first term report cards and he had high marks in almost everything, even being the top of his class in senjutsu, but he was just above last in taijutsu. Kakashi chuckled lightly as he leafed through his book. If that's the case, we should work on that. I think your problem is that you spend too much time using the Shikyaku no Jutsu. You can't stay in four-legged form indefinitely when you fight. Naruto pouted. He liked that jutsu, it was his best. Sure, Orochi complained about the rough ride but to the little blonde it just felt right. I know, I can just fight better when I'm like that, though. Kakashi nodded. The boy's prisoner may be rubbing off on him more than he originally thought. Well, it is your family jutsu so I guess that makes sense. Still, you can't use seals easily with those long nails so that puts you at a disadvantage. Yeah, still, I doubt I'll ever be as good as Lee, he's amazing. Naruto exclaimed. Kakashi nodded sagely. Rock Lee was quite the taijutsu genius and even if the kid couldn't mold chakra he would be a force to reckon with. What about your other friend, Air? 1010. How is she doing? Kakashi actually liked the little girl, she was a good friend to Naruto. That, and she might prove to be a good alternative to Anko. Not that he minded the purple-haired kunoichi, oh no. It was just she was all his nephew would talk about. Her lessons on summoning and snake-related jutsus didn't help. If he didn't know better, Kakashi would have thought Anko liked the attention and admiration. 10-10. She's top of the class in team activities. Uruka-sensei said she would make a good team leader. Her weapon skills are better than me, too. Naruto replied. He was a bit envious of his friend's abilities when it came to weapons. He wasn't half as good with his Kusari Fundo as she was with anything she used. Kakashi picked up thinly veiled jealousy in the boy's voice as he talked about Tenten's weapon skills. Well, the truth is neither the Uchiha or Inuzuka clans have a penchant for weapons. You'll do well with taijutsu and ninjutsu, that's your birthright. Kakashi thought for a moment before turning to his nephew and ruffling his hair. Maybe you could make a jutsu that uses that chain weapon you like so much. Naruto perked up at that. Maybe he could. If he could create his own jutsu, he could actually show it to the kids at school. He couldn't show anyone his Shikyaku no jutsu, someone would recognize it and they would start to ask questions. That's a great idea, Otuji. Naruto exclaimed. Under his mask, Kakashi smirked. It was nice to be able to get a smile out of his nephew with just an idea. The pair continued their talk about academy life as they headed off to the Ichiraku ramen. /////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////// didn't say anything as he, Kakashi, and Anko watched the procession of villagers leave the cemetery. The funeral had been one of the grandest affairs in Konoha. Even the Lord of Fire Country showed up to pay his respects. All of this for one event. The most powerful clan in Konoha history, the Uchiha, were no more. The most promising genius in decades had murdered the entire clan save two. One, Uchiha Sasuke, had actually been spared by his brother's rampage and only suffered psychological damage. The other, Uchiha Naruto, was unknown to the world. Even as he attended his own clan's funeral, he was suffering alone. Why did he do it? Why did they all have to die? The blonde asked. Neither of his companions knew, it was just another thing to them. Kakashi had said goodbye to the only recognized Uchiha he would consider a friend over 5 years ago. Anko never knew the clan to begin with. They were trained not to sympathize with anyone as shinobi. Even with the little boy breaking down in front of them, they couldn't comprehend what was going through his mind. What was worse was that he knew the killer personally. Even though Itachi was only a casual acquaintance, the little boy only had good things to say about him. Of course, he hadn't been the monster that had killed his entire clan. I don't know, Naruto, Anko stated. The black-clad kunoichi bent down to get level with the boy she had grown so fond of. The life of a shinobi is harsh and clan life is even worse. You get embroiled in conflict that involves parts of your own family and you could end up at the throat of people that only yesterday were your best friends. All of that at the whim of a clan elder. Some people just can't cope with it, you know. Naruto sniffled a few more times and nodded. He watched the dozens of fresh graves as he ran his hands over his Inuzuka-inherited whisker marks, a habit he would do whenever he was in deep thought. The ever-present Orochi was silent as he observed what was left of the citizenry leave the area. He really didn't want to bother his companion if it wasn't necessary. Oh, he knew death. He knew it quite well. Actually, he had just hoped Naruto would be a bit older before he had to deal with it. The snake summon could only fathom how that Sasuke boy would handle this. Kakashi was solemn. He was now sure that keeping his nephew away from the Uchiha was a sound decision. If he had not, Naruto would be dead now. That decision, no matter how bad it had made the boy feel, was the right one. However, this didn't make the current situation any less sorrowful. Even though his nephew was obviously having a hard time dealing with the death of his clan, he couldn't find any comforting words. He wasn't really sorry they were dead, after all. They had been the main reason Rin and Obito had to keep their relationship quiet. They deprived his two best friends the simple right to enjoy each other's company in public. No. He couldn't be sorry for any of them, but he could feel for his nephew. That's why he didn't stop the little blonde when he visited every Uchiha grave in the cemetery, the last link between him and his father's legacy. // Third year in the academy. Naruto, age 8. Come on, kid, you can do better than this, right? Anko sighed as she blocked another of Naruto's kicks. The young blonde glared at her and lashed out with a right hook. Anko blocked this as well and casually used her right leg to sweep Naruto's feet out from under him. Anko stepped back to allow the boy time to get back up but still drew out a long sigh as she shook her head. Damn, you really do suck at taijutsu. No wonder you're almost last in your class, you can't hit shit. If I was using Shikyaku no Jutsu you wouldn't be saying that, hubby-chan. Naruto taunted. Even though he got high marks in most of his subjects, Anko would pick at his taijutsu. So what if he was 20th in his class? With his ninjutsu skills he could still hold his own. Anko snorted at the whiny blonde. If you were using that sad excuse for a jutsu I would be insulted. Anko tilted her head for a moment before clapping her hands in triumph. Tell you what, if you manage to even hit me I'll take you out for ramen, but if you can't do that in 10 minutes, you spend every penny you have on Dango banquet for me, deal? Naruto smirked, a habit he had picked up from the older Chunin. I hope you've made some good money from your missions, hubby-chan, because you're going to be making a huge withdrawal from the bank. The little blonde rushed at his sparring partner yet again as the fight for food began in earnest. Trying to catch the older girl unawares, Naruto tried a baseball slide to take out her ankles. Anko actually looked impressed as she leapt over the attack and tagged the boy with a kick before he could get off the ground. Naruto let out a hiss as he tried to fight down the ringing in his ears. I have to concentrate. If I can just guess where she's going to hit next. Naruto let the thought drift off as he barely blocked a jab to his chest. Anko didn't give him any respite, however, as her food snaked out to lash at his side. It was with considerable surprise that the little boy also blocked this attack as if he knew where it was coming. Backing off from her assault, Anko reassessed her opponent. It seemed that the boy was beginning to use his head a bit when it came to blocking, thinking ahead and the like. Of course, she didn't notice the changes going on in the boy's eyes as she attacked from a new angle. Good, kid. Seems you're using your brain a bit more. Still not good enough to get a free meal from me, but it's progress nonetheless. Anko said as she appeared on his left side. Naruto was shocked for a moment but hastily attacked with a side snap kick. If Anko was surprised before, she was shocked now. She was actually forced to block his attack, but he gave her no time to come to terms with this. While she was holding his foot under her arm, he launched a left hook at her which she caught with her right hand. Just as she was about to ask what he was going to do, she was staring into his confident eyes that were a sea of blue with a red comma mark swimming in them. Before she could even gasp, the boy shifted his weight and punched her square in the gut with his right fist. Got you, hubby-chan. Naruto watched in frustration as the purple-haired girl he was fighting turned into a log. Thought this was taijutsu only, Anko-chan. Anko smirked at him from her perch in a tree several yards away. Changed my mind, she said simple before extending her arms. Seniyashu. Naruto leapt away with a bit more finesse as he dodged the snakes coming at him, much to the annoyance of Anko. Even as she was retracting her attacking serpents, she saw Naruto making seals. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Despite the moderate-sized ball of flaming death closing in on her tree, Anko was smiling. With a hasty leap, she was down by the boy before he even got his hands released the tiger seal, and despite fending off Anko's assault, Naruto was smiling as well. Of course, when he was in hospital for several days due to chakra depletion, his smile lost a bit of its brightness. Although, watching Anko get sick from eating too much dango quickly made up for that discomfort. Slash dash 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 slash. 5th year in the academy, Naruto, age 10. O2G, are you still here? Naruto asked as he walked around his apartment. It was just like his uncle, eat and run. I can't believe this. He was supposed to help me train today so I could try to enhance my Sharingan. Naruto huffed. He spared a glance over to his sleeping roommate. Orochi was sprawled out on the couch in the sun. If the boy didn't know better, he would have thought his lazy summon was a cat in a past life. Naruto flopped down on the couch beside the snake and propped his feet up on the coffee table. After a moment, he noticed a small orange book laying on the couch beside him. Picking it up, he read the title. Aika Aika Paradise. This is the book O2G is always reading. Since he had nothing better to do, Naruto started to flip through the pages. At first he was about to fling the book out the window in pure disgust, but after he actually started to read the words, his mood lightened considerably and before long he was laughing hysterically. Kid, what the hell are you going on about? Orochi asked as the violent shaking of the couch woke him up. Naruto wasn't listening to him, however, and continued to read the book with a healthy blush. Somehow, the blue snake didn't think this was a good thing. Slash dash 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 slash. 6th year in the academy, Naruto, age 11. Present day. Uzumaki Naruto. Report to the examination room, please. Iruka called out as he walked out of the door in the back of the classroom. Tenten patted Naruto on the back as the blonde rose from his seat. Don't worry about it, if Lee could pass anyone can. She said as she pointed to a pouting Lee. Hey, do you know how hard it was to fake a Bunshin no Jutsu? I had to make an afterimage. The boy whined. Naruto knew it was all a show, however, as Lee had been worried about the exit exam for months and the boy was extremely relieved to have passed. The blonde sighed and put away his Aika Aika Paradise book. At least Tenten had stopped hitting him whenever he would read it, that was something. I can make a simple Bunshin, Tenten. Don't need to worry so much. Sometimes I wonder if my idea to hide what I can really do was so smart. Nobody thinks I can do anything. Naruto thought to himself as he walked into examination room while Tenten and Lee shouted words of encouragement behind him. He had to smile a bit though, he was excited to finally be here. 6 years of grueling work and finally it was going to pay off, he figured he was entitled to show off a bit to his teachers. Alright Naruto, Iruka started as he sat down behind the examiner's table. The blonde boy was almost salivating at the sight of the numerous hitai-ates laid out on the table. For this exam you will have to use Bunshin no Jutsu. You can begin when ready. Well, what kind of Bunshin do you want? Naruto asked. When he saw Iruka's eyebrow rise he stifled a laugh, this was going to be fun. How many types can you do? Iruka asked. He knew both Anko and Kakashi had a hand in tutoring the boy but ever since his 3rd year his grades had leveled off leaving him squarely in the middle of his class. Naruto tilted his head in thought before holding up 3 fingers. Bunshin no Jutsu, Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, and Jujuin Bunshin no Jutsu with the help of Orochi. That was a bit of a shock to Iruka. He knew the boy carried around a pet snake with him, he just didn't think it would be good for anything, this was something he wanted to see. If you think you can perform a Jujuin Bunshin you can. If you can't, just do a regular Bunshin. Iruka replied. Just because he wanted to see if Naruto could do it wasn't a reason to fail him if he couldn't. Naruto smirked as a bluish snake slithered out from the sleeve of his red t-shirt. While the reptile was still coiled around the boy's arm, Naruto started to go though a few hand seals, concentrating intently. Jujuin Bunshin no Jutsu. A puff of smoke enveloped boy and reptile but as it cleared there were 2 identical blondes standing beside each other. The only difference was that one had the slitted eyes of a snake. Very good, Naruto. It would be a perfect clone if it wasn't for the eyes. Iruka started. Naruto raised an eyebrow and looked at his clone. Idiot. Change your eyes before you fail me. Naruto barked at the clone. With a sigh, the clone's eyes shifted to an exact copy of Naruto's. Iruka smiled brightly, the boy had more talent than he originally thought. Although, he did wonder how a simple snake could take orders like that. Uzumaki Naruto, congratulations on graduating the Konoha Academy. All right, Naruto yelled as he held up the hitai-ate proudly. He quickly tied it around his neck with the symbol facing forward, just like a collar. A puff of smoke caught their attention as Orochi reverted to his serpentine form and slithered up Naruto's outstretched arm. With an enthusiastic wave, the boy ran out of the room shouting to his friends. Hey, no matter how old you get, some things never change. Iruka said to himself as he called in the next student. Guys, I passed, Naruto yelled as he ran up to his seat. Tenten smiled warmly at him and lightly punched his shoulder. Told you, making a Bunshin is no problem. The older girl said as Lee grumbled about afterimages. The shaggy-haired boy was quick to recover, however, and slapped Naruto on the back. Yes, the fires of youth burn brightly this day. The class went silent as Iruka walked out of the exam room with a piece of paper. He looked at it before coughing loud enough to get everyone's attention. Congratulations to all of you that have passed. Now that the exams are over, you will all be split up into 3-man teams led by a Junin-sensei. All the students looked on in silence as the teams were called out. Naruto, Tenten, and Lee only paid attention when one of their names was called. Team 2, Ama Tenten, Rock Lee, and Uzumaki Naruto. The trio grinned at each other as Lee started to go on about legendary youth. After the teams were called out, most of the students left with the various Junin that picked them up. Naruto groaned when Team 2 was the last team left. Where the heck is this guy? The blonde asked no one in particular. Tenten glared at him and punched his shoulder. It could be a girl, you know. Don't be a pig. Naruto snorted. I don't care if it's a goat as long as they just show up. If I was a goat then I would be the most youthful goat in Konoha. Naruto, Tenten, and Lee all froze at that voice. Albeit Lee was frozen for a different reason. No. Anyone but him. Kami-sama isn't that cruel. Naruto mumbled with a true look of fear on his face. Tenten was chanting a mantra of, it was only supposed to be one day. Over and over again as she started shaking. Behold, my youthful students, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey, made a guy. Lee started cheering immediately as the only person that would ever wear green spandex, made a guy, walked through the classroom door. With a thumbs up and a blinding smile, he walked over to the 3 genins. Guy-sensei. Fortune smiles upon us to have you as our role model. Lee exclaimed. It is my good fortune to have a student such as you, Lee. Guy yelled. Naruto, by this time, was reputedly driving his head into the desk while Tenten was in near tears. Of course, being made a guy the Junin completely misunderstood their plight. My other students have been driven to silence by my youthful entry. Come Lee, let us take them to the veranda to discuss our youthful team. With that, Guy grabbed Naruto and tossed him over his shoulder while Lee grabbed Tenten. Before either of the two sane genins could complain about the treatment, the two beasts of Konoha were already out the door with their latest victims. Lee, if you don't put me down right now, I'm going to start carving you with a kunai. Tenten shouted from her place over Lee's shoulder. The mini beast of Konoha visibly paled and set the angry kunoichi down. Guy still had Naruto hoisted over his shoulder and was running up the stairs to the small veranda that the academy had. My youthful students, we are here, Guy announced as he set the young blonde down like a sack of potatoes. Lee and Tenten arrived just before Naruto could unleash a torrent of abuse on Guy. Tenten was still glaring daggers at Lee, who had the common sense to look sorry. Now that we're all here, can we start the meeting, Guy-sensei? Lee asked in a more subdued voice. Naruto grunted and pulled out a familiar orange book and began reading, seemingly ignoring the conversation. Tenten rolled her eyes and snatched the book away from her new teammate. Read that trash later, Naruto. This garbage is such a slap in the face to women. That's not true. The stories project a healthy view of a woman's perspective and help me get in touch with my inner kunoichi. Naruto defended. Tenten gave him a level glare for a few moments before replying. How long did it take you to come up with that? Hey, about 10 seconds before you took the book from me. Naruto nervously laughed as he scratched the back of his neck. The blonde shinobi could almost hear Orochi sigh under his sleeve. Ahem. The two genins turned to see Guy and Lee staring at him with a slightly annoyed look. Naruto, Tenten, you two may have hip attitudes that us, but we should start the meeting. Guy said as Lee took a seat by Naruto. Tenten tossed Naruto's Ika Paradise back but included a glare that showed her disapproval. Guy calmed down and re-adopted his usual insanely happy disposition. Yosh. As you three already know, I am Maida Guy. We'll start by moving around the group to get to know each other, then we'll gauge each of your abilities. Lee, let's start with you. Tell us about what you wish to accomplish. Hi, Guy-sensei. I am Rock Lee. The shaggy-haired genin shouted as Naruto and Tenten groaned. They knew who he was. They had been friends for over 4 years. I want to prove that I can be a good ninja without using ninjutsu and genjutsu. My life goal is to be just like Guy-sensei. Guy started to tear up at his youthful student's declaration, but Tenten cut him off before he could get too far. I'm Ama Tenten. I specialize in weapons and I want to be the first girl Hokage to prove that a kunoichi can be just as strong as the guys. Naruto groaned as she got just as impassioned as Lee, the traitor. When everyone turned to him, he sighed. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. I really don't have any goals yet other than getting stronger so a certain person will acknowledge me as an adult. My skills are more ninjutsu than anything, although I have some talent in taijutsu and genjutsu. The blonde said as he too got caught up in Guy's enthusiasm. Maybe it was a virus or something. Guy nodded at all this in a semi-serious fashion. Such lofty goals my students have chosen. As your sensei, your goals become mine. Today, however, we should see just how much each of you know so I can determine how much training you'll need to get to those dreams. Let us all meet at Training Ground 5 in 30 minutes for a simple aptitude test. Be prepared, my fiery students. Guy exclaimed. Naruto and Tenten winced at the volume of his voice but breathed a sigh of relief when the Junin puffed out of existence. Well, that was interesting. Tenten said as she broke the silence. Lee clenched a fist and pumped it in the air. Yosh. We are very fortunate to have Guy-sensei to guide us as our instructor. Fortunate. That guy will be the death of us all. Naruto whined. And what was with you, Tenten? You got all Lee-like when you were talking about girls versus boys. Tenten flushed a bit but still managed to glare. Oh yeah, what was that bit about? I want to be stronger so someone will acknowledge me as an adult. Tenten taunted as she did a horrible impression of her blonde friend. Before Naruto could start to complain, Lee leapt up from his seat. We have no time for petty arguing. Guy-sensei is waiting for us at Area 5. With that said, Lee ran from the veranda leaving his teammates to catch up. Slash dash 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 slash. Today's graduation, huh? Kakashi asked as more scrambled eggs disappeared off his plate. Several years ago this would have unnerved Naruto, but by now he'd gotten used to not seeing his uncle's face. The blonde boy would wager that Kakashi's mask wouldn't even come off at his funeral. Naruto looked up from his ramen and nodded. Yup, we'll get split into teams, right? That's the way it goes. Teams of 3 with a Junin sensei. Kakashi explained. Today's breakfast was more subdued since Anko had a mission and wouldn't be back until the next day. Think you'll be the Junin for any teams this year, O2G? You failed that team last year. Naruto asked. He knew all about his uncle's infamous lazy streak and the near-impossible test he used to weed out genins he felt weren't worth teaching. Kakashi smiled under his mask as he dismissed his nephew's fears with the wave of his hand. Don't worry so much, I skip every other year, remember? I'll have to try one next graduation, though. Maybe someone from the next crop knows how to treat their comrades. Kakashi sighed and leaned in on the table. Listen, though, I have something I want to tell you before you head out. Naruto was a bit unnerved by the sudden seriousness, but he made sure to give the Junin his full attention. Well, you'll be on a team starting today, no more training. You'll be on full missions where if you make a mistake, you'll die. I, nor Anko, can watch out for you anymore. You have to take responsibility for everything you do, understand that? Kakashi asked. Naruto thought for a long moment. It was like the ending of something in his life, some reassurance he always had. He couldn't put his finger on it, though, but something snapped inside as this set in. With a slight nod as his answer, Kakashi continued. Well, that's good. I do have one last piece of advice for you. You should tell your team about your family and not hold back. Naruto was about to object when Kakashi held up his hand to silence his nephew. It's your life now. Do what you want. Just remember that it's not just yourself you're looking after anymore. You have an obligation to your team and sensei. If you don't let them know what you can really do, it could cause a lapse in decision that could get you killed. Think about that. Naruto opened his mouth to say something but sighed instead. Naruto supposed his uncle was right. The Uchiha clan wasn't around anymore to take him away and the Inuzuka wouldn't want anything to do with him because his mother had been kicked out of the clan. He was just so used to being an Uzumaki, his own person, that he didn't want a clan to dictate his life. Of course, he didn't want whatever teammates he would have get hurt because he wouldn't trust them with a secret. Yuto. Naruto. Hey, Blondie. Naruto snapped out of his memory to find Tenten poking him in the shoulder. Team 2 was currently waiting at Training Ground 5 for Guy to make an appearance. Lee was off to the side punching away at a log as a warm-up exercise while Naruto and Tenten were sitting off to the side conserving their strength. The sports bun-clad girl was currently eyeing her teammate with a worried expression. Are you okay? Kinda zoned out for a few minutes there. Just remembering what I have to do after the meeting, shopping and stuff. He lied. Tenten quirked her eyebrow at the unease in his voice but her concerns were left unvoiced as a booming voice settled over the training ground. My youthful students. I am lucky to have comrades that understand the importance of punctuality. Guy exclaimed as he appeared in a swirl of leaves. The green beast gave his patented thumbs up as his 3 students gathered around him. Guy-sensei. What training exercise would you have us do? Naruto and Tenten cringed once again. This was going to be a long training session if Lee kept his enthusiasm up. The green beast smiled at his students despite the fact 2 of them were not very enthusiastic. I am glad you asked. I shall gauge your talents by one-on-one sparring. You must attack me with all of your youthful energy so that I can judge your skills. I know it will be difficult for you to harm me, but it must be done. Guy declared as he clenched his fist. Lee started to tear up at the thought of harming his spandex-clad mentor but Naruto and Tenten were already doing warm-up exercises. The looks of pure joy both of them had as Guy said to try and harm him. Well, that didn't make him feel all too safe even if he was an elite Junin. Tenten, you want first shot at him? Naruto asked as he rolled his neck. The girl smiled viciously as she whipped out her bow staff. Thanks, it's like an early birthday gift. The killing intent coming off of the 2 genins was enough to make Guy rethink his sparring idea. The fires of youth burn brightly in these 2, hey. He mumbled to himself as he watched the 2 genin not fighting move to the side of the training area. Oh yes, the fires of youth. Tenten mumbled as she cracked her knuckles and gave her bow a test swing with her left hand. Anytime you're ready, Guy-sensei. With a weary eye, Guy dropped into a loose taijutsu stance. Tenten gave him an unnerving smile before she sent a shuriken towards her spandex-clad teacher. The Junin casually avoided the steel implement and only grinned as the sports-bund girl ran towards him with her staff. Off to the side, Naruto and Lee were watching the fight with growing interest. Naruto was surprised that the older Junin was avoiding his teammates' strikes rather than blocking them. He really didn't think the strange man was that fast. Ooh, Guy-sensei is amazing. He moves like a fish in a brook. Lee exclaimed. For a few moments the young blonde could only stare at his other teammate before shaking his head. If he hadn't figured out where Lee got his sayings in all the years they had been friends he would probably never understand. Tenten. Try maneuver number 8, Naruto shouted from the sidelines. The more she wore out Guy, the better he would look when he fought the blonde decided. Lee tilted his head in thought before pumping his fist. Yosh, not even Guy-sensei can beat maneuver number 8. Tenten gave the slightest of nods as her latest staff thrust only succeeded in making Guy move his head with inhuman speed to make the wooden shaft pass harmlessly by. With a shout, Tenten rammed her bow into the ground in front of Guy, who merely raised an unnaturally thick eyebrow. Using the bow to vault into the air, Tenten employed both hands to draw kunai and shuriken from her various weapon pouches. In a flash, the deadly implements were sent sailing towards the Junin in various sweeping arcs. The fires of youth burn brightly this day. Few academy students have the dedication to make preset attack plans, but I do believe you should aim better, my hip student. Guy shouted enthusiastically as the weapons passed harmlessly by. In an instant, Tenten's smile turned downright vicious as she pulled on the near-invisible wires that were connected to each weapon. The Shrunkens caught the Junin's legs and spun around in tight circles only to embed into nearby trees with the kunai pinning them though the center for extra grip. Guy, tied up like a mummy, whistled in appreciation as Tenten landed several meters away, the wires still gripped in her hands. Yosh. A marvelous plan, Tenten. If you keep this level of professionalism up you will certainly be Hokage. Tenten had to smile at that. Guy was the first person other than her close friends that had ever said she could be Hokage one day. Unfortunately, her happiness turned into abject shock as the green-clad Junin merely flexed his muscles to make the wires binding him snap like common twine. Guy, oblivious to the shock he had just given his students, calmly walked back to the center of the training field and gave his stunned student a thumbs up and a smile. Tenten is currently my #1 student. The fires of youth that burn in her threaten to even engulf myself. Good work, Tenten, Lee shouted from the sidelines. The shaggy-haired youth wasn't fazed at all about Guy's escape, as if he expected it from his mentor. Naruto just shook his head as Tenten finally found her wits long enough to walk over to the side. How, what? Naruto shook his head. No use even thinking about Guy's freakish strength. Well, he is a Junin, Tenten. The blonde offered lamely. Still, the weapons mistress didn't complete her thought and instead opted to lean against a nearby tree in a huff. Who will be next in facing the trials of youth? Don't be shy, Guy shouted from the clearing. Lee's eye fire was flaring and he was about to rush out to try his luck when Naruto put a hand on his shoulder, holding him back. I'll take this round, Lee. Otoji fights with him enough that I know what to expect, Naruto said as he walked out into the field. Lee was a bit disappointed but settled back down to watch the coming fight with Tenten. Ah, my eternal rival's hip nephew. He tells me you're quite the strategist for your age, but strategy alone won't make you into an effective shinobi. For one to truly be a deadly green beast you must also train the body. Guy exclaimed as he pumped his fist, much to the delight of his cheering fans. Lee. Naruto just smirked. So, his uncle hadn't told Guy the real story. A plan was already forming in the blonde's head as he pulled a tiny orb from his side pouch. That's true, but a shinobi must also be able to look underneath the underneath, right, Guy-sensei? Before Guy could respond, Naruto tossed the small ball at the ground in front of his feet. A large cloud of purple smoke erupted from the impact and settled over the entire field, obscuring the two figures. Wish I thought of that, Tenten grumbled as she watched the opening round of the fight. Konoha Senpu. All at once, the cloud of smoke was cut neatly in half as a powerful gust of wind tore through the training area. Both Tenten and Lee covered their faces to avoid dust and smoke from getting in their eyes. When they were able to, they saw Guy standing on his left leg with his right still held in its post-kick position. Amazing. Tenten couldn't help but agree with her slack-jawed friend as they watched the smoke dissipate. Guy returned to his former state with his arms crossed and both feet on the ground. With a raised eyebrow, he looked at the forest opposite of his other two students. Very clever, but what will you do now, my youthful student? He asked himself in such a low voice that one would not imagine it could come from Maida Guy. Deep in the forest a yellow blur makes its way, thought he. Canopy. Winding in and out of the foliage, the figure comes to a stop on a particularly large branch and scans the forest with his blue eyes. If one would look closer at this figure, they would see a single comma mark swirling in the blue irises as they search for threats. He's not following us, Naruto voices. From his sleeve, a bluish snake slithers onto the branch beside the boy. I don't think so. It makes sense. You have to fight him eventually, so you'll have to go back and face him. Why waste energy chasing you all around Konoha? Naruto snorted. It seemed like a good plan at the time. The blonde cupped his chin in thought as Orochi yawned. The snake almost fell off his perch when the boy sprung to life with the snap of his fingers. That's it. We'll do special tactic number 9. Naruto said as he picked his irked companion up. The snake flicked out its tongue in annoyance at being handled like a sack of potatoes. Jujuin Bunshin no Jutsu. With a pop and a small cloud of smoke, Orochi reverted to his human appearance. Naruto clapped his hands in glee as he pulled out another smoke bomb. Orochi sighed. Once Naruto was in plan mode, it wasn't worth the argument to suggest any other ideas. The boy still had a one-track mind with battles. As clever as Naruto was, he would fall into predictable attack patterns. Orochi knew what was going to happen, even that purple-haired woman had fallen for it the first time they had tried it. Of course, after a while she caught on and would regularly defeat the tactic, but this Guy creature had never seen it, so it might work. You know that everyone will wonder how you knew the attacks you're going to do, Orochi stated. Naruto sighed. Well, they deserve to know, right? Just play your part and leave the explanations to me once we knock the green off Guy's jumpsuit. You know the drill, now let's get to it. And for Kami's sake, change your eyes. Naruto explained, scolded as he handed the smoke bomb over to his doppelganger. The snake-turned boy only nodded as both blondes headed back the way they came. Where is that idiot? Tenten groaned. After his good start, the boy had just dropped off the radar. For a few moments the girl mulled over the idea that Naruto had used the smoke as a cover to run off so he could read his perverted book and let them deal with Guy. Of course, Tenten quickly chased that thought away once she remembered that between him, Lee, and herself, Naruto was the better strategist. No, it's probably some over-elaborate plan or something, she assured herself. Her assumption was proven correct a few moments later when a second smoke bomb erupted from the tree line, cutting off the view of trees. Guy quickly turned towards the smoke and smiled. The man did love a challenge. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Guy blinked in mild shock as he jumped over a medium-sized fireball that streamed from the purplish smokescreen. The heat quickly made the smoke dissipate, leaving Naruto in clear sight. Off to the side, Tenten stared with a dumbstruck expression. Lee, when did Naruto learn that jutsu? The girl asked as she turned towards her equally shocked teammate. Kakashi might have taught it to him, Lee stated with uncertainty in his voice. Tenten frowned slightly at the sight. Naruto should have told us he could do that. Comrades shouldn't keep secrets from each other. Lee was about to agree when he noticed another figure rush out of the forest. Guy noticed it as well and managed to dodge a claw swipe mid-leap. Naruto landed on all fours and snarled in irritation. Even using the Shikyaku no Jutsu he couldn't hit the self-declared green beast. Guy landed in a crouch as he eyed the two blonde boys that had attacked him. A bunshin. I've never seen one that can use jutsus other than a very advanced cage bunshin. The Junin mused in a semi-serious tone. And that fighting stance is the result of Shikyaku no Jutsu, correct? Why would you know a Inuzuka skill like that? The feral boy tensed his hands, causing his long fingernails to grip the ground. Off to his side, he could see Orochi moving to trap Guy between the two of them. It was a good strategy if he could keep the Junin's attention while his partner did it. Hey, there's a lot you don't know about me. Hey, you won't be able to keep dodging, not with my eyes. Naruto snarled, baring his enhanced fangs. Guy quirked an eyebrow at the declaration. His curiosity turned to shock as Naruto activated his level 1 Sharingan. Yosh, is that? The rest of Guy's exclamation was cut short as his ears picked up the sound of something moving towards his venerable back. On instinct, the Junin dodged the kunai that was intended to impale his leg. The bunshin, Guy thought as he saw the bipedal Naruto dash back into the trees. Naruto took advantage of the Junin's lapse of concentration and ran at the man with his enhanced speed granted by using all four limbs. Guy was forced to move from his spot as he dodged swipe after swipe from the inch-long claws that whizzed by various parts of his body. Even as engaged as he was, the Junin easily outmaneuvered the blonde. As fast as he was, Naruto was very linear in his attacks. The Sharingan, no matter how the boy had it, didn't do more than allow Naruto to track his sensei's movements. Too bad his body was just too slow to keep up. Seniyashu. Guy parried another swipe by the feral Naruto as he leapt over the shadow snakes that were sent towards him. Yosh, that bunshin of yours if quite competent. Guy exclaimed as he reverted back to his usual enthusiastic self. Faster than Orochi could see, the green beast was on him. With a quick roundhouse, the blonde was sent careening towards the side of the training field, landing next to Lee and Tenten. With an audible poof, the Jujuin bunshin was dispelled, leaving a very dizzy serpent where a blonde bunshin once was. What the heck? Lee, isn't that Naruto's pet? Tenten asked as she looked the snake over. Lee managed to pry his eyes away from the fight long enough to nod to his teammate. Naruto growled at the sight of his helper being so casually defeated. The boy-turned beast moved into a crouch and gripped the Kusari Fundo that he was wearing as a bandolier. You won't get me that easily. Behold my ultimate jutsu. Naruto bellowed as the weighted chain flew to his hands with the flick of his wrist. He pulled it taut and started doing seals. Mugen Kusari no Jutsu. The blonde twirled the chain and sent it speeding towards the Junin. Guy started to comment that the short weapon couldn't possibly get to him and that he could attack closer when, to his shock, the chain continued on its course, unaffected by its previous length. The Junin dodged as the weighted end of the chain sailed past his head. Guy was a bit perplexed at the smirk the young genin was wearing until he heard the sound of a chain moving behind him. The Kusari Fundo curved its arc and was now following the Junin as he darted around the field. After a few moments, the jutsu fell apart and the chain recoiled like a wench back to its original length. As impressive as the jutsu was, it obviously used up a massive amount of chakra. Between the Sharingan, Shikyaku no Jutsu, and using his chakra to manipulate his Kusari Fundo, Naruto was pretty much drained of his reserves. As the Shikyaku no Jutsu failed due to lack of chakra, the small audience which consisted of Guy, Lee, and Tenten watched in amazement as the dog-like features receded back to the blonde's original form. The blonde boy sagged his head in defeat as he put his Kusari Fundo back bandolier style. He started to chuckle nervously as he took note of the stares he was getting from Tenten and Lee. Well, Guess Guy-sensei won this round, huh guys? Naruto asked with mock innocence. Yash, what amazing training you must have done in order to acquire all those skills in the one day between graduation and meeting Guy-sense. Lee exclaimed as he ran over to his blonde teammate. Tenten punched his shoulder lightly as she sighed. Lee, there is no way he learned all that in one day. He's been hiding it from us for who knows how long. The older genin turned to Naruto with a glare. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Naruto wilted under his teammates' accusing eyes. Even Guy looked like he wanted an explanation. The blonde sighed. He was going to tell them anyway. You see. He took a deep breath and decided to go for broke in one breath. My dad was an Uchiha and my mother was an Inuzuka, so I learned the family jutsus. His two teammates blinked while Guy fell to the ground in shock. You're an Uchiha, Tenten yelled. Yep. My dad was one of Otoji's old teammates, so was mom. Sorry I couldn't tell you guys. I just didn't want to live with the Uchiha clan or anything. Naruto mumbled. Guy finally regained his usual cool composure and looked his student over. You do have the birthmarks of an Inuzuka, the hair too. So, that's why you were mopping around for months after the Uchiha massacre. Tenten mused. You should have told us. I thought we were friends, Naruto. The blonde sunk lower to the ground with the accusation. I know. I just got used to hiding it from everyone, so I stayed quiet. I'm really sorry. Come on guys, forgive me. Tenten narrowed her eyes at the puppy dog look Naruto was directing at her. Darn blonde, that look should be listed as a forbidden jutsu. If Lee does I guess I can. Said genin had his eyes closed in thought. Tenten waved her hand in front of his face and almost fell over when his eyes snapped open. Naruto, you are now my eternal rival. As an Uchiha you are a genius ninja and I will defeat you. He declared with gusto. Naruto blinked once, then twice at the boy. Can we be friendly rivals? Of course. Lee agreed with his normal nice guy pose. Guy started crying about how youthful his students were before Tenten whacked them both with her bow staff. You don't have any other secrets you're hiding from us, right? Tenten asked with a bit of suspicion in her voice. Naruto bit his lip as he thought. Since Orochi doesn't like to talk around other people, he wouldn't be a problem. Best to keep that one under his hat. Not that I can think of. Oh, I can use my dad's blood limit. That's something. He cheered. When it came to his Sharingan he was all smiles. He didn't have many opportunities to brag about it, after all. Yash, I saw it during the sparring match. You have already activated it to its first level, correct? Guy asked. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes in concentration. After a few moments passed, he opened them with his Sharingan activated. Tenten leaned in to study the single, small, black comma marks in each eye. That's the Uchiha bloodline. You can copy stuff with it, right? Tenten asked as Lee pulled out a new notebook to record all this new information. Not mine. I can only see fast movement. Throw a kunai at me and I can see it, stuff like that. I have to have 2 tomo in both of my eyes before I can copy techniques. 3 in each eye would let me predict movements so I can block better and use advanced genjutsu. Naruto explained as he released his blood limit. Guy nodded. He knew all this from his multiple fights with Kakashi. What about the way you were acting during the fight? You were brash and uncoordinated. The initial strike showed forethought, but once that was done you simply attacked head-on. That was the effects of the Shikyaku no Jutsu. When I use it I get a power and speed boost, but I really don't think like I normally do. I'm more animal than anything else. I really can't explain it. I know what I'm doing but I don't want to control myself. Naruto explained as he shrugged. Guy got a thoughtful look on his face but said nothing. Lee, on the other hand, nodded and copied all his new rival said. Getting information is a must for shinobi. Yash, I must now outdo my rival. Lee exclaimed as he put away his notebook. The boy turned to Guy with such youthful fire in his eyes that Tenten took a step back. Guy-sensei, it is time for my sparring match. Come, Lee, the fires of youthful rivalry shall enhance your strength. The Junin announced as he and Lee ran out to the middle of the training ground. Tenten had to drag the exhausted Naruto out of the way before the match could start. Once she was done, the 2 taijutsu specialists dropped into their individual stances. Well, Lee did. Guy still crossed his arms intending to just dodge so he could gauge his student's skill. Don't mess with him, Lee. Use the knuckles right from the start, he's probably still tired from his last 2 fights. Tenten shouted from the sidelines. Lee thought for a moment before reaching into his hip pouch and pulling out a set of brass knuckles. Guy blinked. He didn't think the boy used any weapons. Lee noticed his look and flushed a bit. They were a birthday gift from Tenten and she insisted I know how to use them since I can't use any jutsus. Such a caring teammate. You should learn from her, Lee, she could really give you an important edge. Guy decided. Lee nodded enthusiastically and slid the weapons on before dropping into the standard academy taijutsu stance. As if there was some unseen cue, Lee suddenly ran at his opponent. Guy tensed as he barely dodged a jab aimed for his head. Lee dropped to a crouch as soon as he retracted his fist and tried to sweep the Junin. In a mighty display of reaction ability, Guy hopped over Lee's leg and landed a few feet back. Not one to be deterred, Lee again ran at the green beast and tried to catch his head in a roundhouse. Guy copied Lee and dropped to a crouch to avoid the attack. Got you, Guy-sensei. Lee thought as he suddenly redirected his foot into a heel drop. Guy was caught off guard and for the first time in the fight he was forced to block the strike by crossing his arms over his head and catching Lee's heel. The genin used Guy's block for leverage as he lifted his other foot to catch the Junin in the chin. Good one, Lee, Guy exclaimed cheerfully as he leaned back on his heels to avoid the kick. Now that Lee was caught with both feet off the ground, Guy simply pushed up with his guard and sent Lee falling to his back in defeat. Off to the side, Tenten sighed. Lee went down quicker than you. This guy is going to make us train for weeks, now. Lee did better than me, actually. Naruto remarked. At Tenten's look, the blonde explained. Lee was the only person to actually hit Guy-sensei. Well, you caught him in your wires, so. Tenten tried to stifle a laugh. You, for all your skills you were the only person not able to hit him. The genin said as she finally lost control of her giggle fit. Naruto mumbled some curses under his breath as he let Orochi slither back under his sleeve. Yosh, my youthful students, you have all performed admirably. Guy said once the four-person team regrouped under the shade of a large tree. Now I shall explain each of your weaknesses so you can train in them. The green beast turned towards the weapons mistress first. Tenten, your weapon skills are amazing for your age, but you need to learn more ninjutsu for when your opponent is incapacitated. A quick Kaden jutsu would have won you the match if you would have used it while I was caught in your hip trap. Tenten actually looked surprised that Guy could give good advice and took it in stride. Naruto, you have the best ninjutsu skills in the group and the sharpest tactical mind. You need to work on your taijutsu skills when you're not using Shikyaku no jutsu, though. Work on gaining more control over yourself while in that form. 2. Try meditative exercises. The blonde shrugged. It was more or less what his uncle was telling him to do. The meditative stuff was new, maybe that would help. Guy sniffled as he looked at Lee. Lee, your taijutsu skills are the best in the group. With greater speed you shall be invincible, so we shall train. I'll bring you a set of weights tomorrow when we meet again. Lee nodded enthusiastically. He loved training. Yosh, that is all for today, my youthful students. We shall meet here again tomorrow to get our first official mission from Hokage-sama. Dismissed. Guy cheered as he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. After Guy was gone, the group decided to go their separate ways for the day. Tenten was going to go train with her bow, Lee was trying to beat a poor log into submission, while Naruto walked into town. Hey, Orochi, Naruto called as he walked down one of the side streets of Konoha. The bluish snake poked his head out of the boy's sleeve. Naruto smiled at the snake and patted him on the head like a pet, much to the annoyance of the summoned snake. You did pretty good today. The snake sighed. Yes, I know. The green-skinned human only got lucky. He is lucky I didn't have access to my full power, you wouldn't be able to find all the pieces. The snake taunted. Naruto shook his head, his partner was still insisting he was some kind of demigod. You know, hey, isn't that? Naruto quickly ducked behind a tree that was off to the side of Konoha's main street. There, walking thought the crowd, was the snake seductress herself. Anko-chan. She was supposed to be gone on a mission until tomorrow. When did she get back? The blonde asked. Like I know. Hey, who's that guy with her? Orochi asked, knowing full well what was going to happen. Oh, how he loved screwing with humans. Naruto narrowed his eyes. There was some guy chatting with the purple-haired Junin as they walked down the street. Anko was actually smiling as she talked, too. Not her. I'm going to torture you and enjoy it. Smile that most people got. No, this was an actual, happy Anko, smile. Orochi saw the effect his little observation had and inwardly grinned, time to drive the last nail into his coffin of fun. You know, she looks like she's enjoying herself. Isn't that great, Naruto? I mean, she doesn't date much anyway, so this guy must be pretty special, don't you think? The blonde grinded his teeth. She's not that happy. He must be a friend or something. Orochi nodded sagely. You're right, that must be it. We all know how easily Anko makes friends. The snake sarcastically said. It's not like I care, anyway. Naruto mumbled. Then why are we following them? Orochi said as he watched the boy try and blend into the crowd to follow the pair from a safe distance. Naruto didn't give him an answer other than a very aggravated growl. You know, even I feel sorry for this guy, the Yamada no Orochi thought as he saw Naruto's Sharingan-enhanced glare. Oh yes, the snake felt sorry for this poor man. Too bad it would be more fun to watch the resulting train wreck than to try and calm the boy down.